Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 27th, 2025 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Chris Jones. I'm the chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via WebEx platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Absolutely. When the time for public comment is called on, we will ask everyone to raise their hand. You can do so by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For dial-in users, you'll need to dial *3 to raise your hand. For our mobile device users, you have 3 different screens, and only one of them has a hand button. So you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... and cycle through the 3 different screens in order to find your hand. As stated before, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. I will note that Nick Boyd will be participating remotely today. Christina, would you please call roll to establish quorum?
Good morning. Dr. Annette Walker.
Good morning, President, Public Board Member.
Eleanor Uribe.
Good morning, President, LCSW member.
Susan Friedman.
Good morning, public member, present.
John Sobek.
Present, LMFT member, pronouns he, him.
Wendy Strack.
Present, public member.
Christopher Jones.
Present, Chair, LEP member, pronouns he, him.
Justin Huff.
Present, LMFT, he, him.
Abigail Ortega.
Good morning, LCSW member, present.
And remotely, Dr. Nicholas Boyd.
Nick Boyd, LPCC member, present.
And for the record, Lorez Bailey and Kelly Ranasinghe are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Christina. We will be taking a lunch.
Can I pause a second?
Sure.
It seems there's a Wi-Fi problem and I can't get into some of the documents for today. Can we check into that real quick before we continue?
So next on our agenda is the suggestion for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda item suggestions from our board members? Nick?
No suggestions from me at this
All
time.
right. Thank you. Are there any members of the audience that would like to suggest a future agenda item? No one in here. How about from our remote audience, moderator?
All right, we are taking public comment for future agenda items. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... to find your hand. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Next on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I will now open for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on an agenda of a future meeting. Each commentator will have 2 minutes. Do any of my board members have any comments for items that are not on the agenda? All right. How about from our audience present in the room? Okay. How about from our remote participants?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 3. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. All right, at this time, we can begin our petition hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Judge Corin Wong. Good morning, Judge. The meeting is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you. All right, so we'll call the matters in the order in which they're listed in the agenda. So the first matter will be Kathleen K. Tolan. The second matter will be Jennifer Ann Mitchell. And then the final matter will be Lisa Marie M. Sanchez. So first, we'll call the Kathleen K. Tolan matter. Please come have a seat at the table. All right, thank you. Mr. Court Reporter, if we could go ahead and go on the record. So we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for modification of probation by Kathleen, middle name K, K-A-Y, Toland, T-O-L-A-N-D. It is agency case number 2002-021-001-271, OAH number 2025-010-527. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. Chairperson?
Present.
Madam Vice Chairperson?
Present.
Ms. Bailey? Dr. Boyd?
Present.
Ms. Friedman?
Present.
Mr. Huft?
Present.
Ms. Ortega?
Present.
Mr. Ranasingi? Mr. Sovic?
Present.
Ms. Uribe?
Present.
Dr. Walker?
Present.
All right, let the record reflect there is a quorum of the board. Next, if I could take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, so Ms. Tolan is present and representing herself. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're here for the hearing on your petition for modification of probation. And just to let you know the procedural process, if you will, after I explain the process, Ms. Crawford will introduce the petition and supporting documents and any other evidence she has, and then provide a short overview of the history of your license, including when it was issued and your prior discipline. And then after she provides that brief overview, the matter will turn over to you to present evidence in support of your petition. Did you have any witnesses you wanted to call other than yourself?
No, I don't.
Okay, and did you have any additional documents other than what was submitted to the board with your petition?
No, I will be going for my own notes. I did make copies. If anybody wants to follow with copies, I will be taking this slowly. So you should be able to follow along. But if not, like I said, I've got copies of my notes if anybody would like to have them.
Okay, thank you. And one thing is if you'd make sure you're in front of the microphone so we can make sure we all hear you. So when you provide your testimony and your evidence, what's important to understand is what the board is most interested in is any rehabilitation you have undergone since the discipline of your license. So it's not necessary to, we're not here to relitigate the prior discipline. You'll hear Ms. Crawford in her summary briefly talk about the prior discipline to provide context. You may do the same if it helps explain your rehabilitation or your subsequent conduct. But it's important to remember that we're not here to relitigate that prior discipline. And the board's most interested in, as I mentioned, hearing any rehabilitation you have undergone. After you provide your testimony, then Ms. Crawford will have a chance to ask you questions. And then after she asks her questions, you'll have a chance, if there's anything else you thought of to say, you could do that. And then it'll be that back and forth format until you finish your testimony, Ms. Crawford finish your questions, and then the board will have an opportunity to ask questions. And then once the board asks all its questions, then the parties will have a chance to provide a summary closing argument. And then after that, the matter will be submitted. So the board will meet in closed session later today to deliberate on your petition. So you will not receive a decision today, but rather you'll receive a decision in the mail sometime in the future. And then, as you may have heard me say at the beginning, we have a court reporter here. After the hearing is concluded and the matter submitted, if you just have a seat for a moment, the court reporter will be filling out a sheet, and you'll get one. And that's just in case you want a copy of today's transcript, that will have the information you need to go about ordering the transcript. And then once you get that sheet, you're welcome to leave. You're also welcome to stay and observe the other matters in open session if you like. Okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to answer the questions if I can.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Crawford, if you'd like to introduce your documents or provide your summary statement, whichever you'd like to do first.
Yes, Your Honor, I'll provide a statement. The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on September 24th of 2008. That license is currently active and will expire November 30th of 2025. An accusation was filed on September 27th of 2022, and a stipulated settlement was adopted on September 28th, 2023, which placed petitioner on 3 years of probation with terms and conditions. The background of this case is that in February of 2020, the petitioner began treating RR, a client, for depression and anxiety due to separation from his wife. In March 2020, NR, who is RR's former spouse, joined them for couples counseling. And by May of 2020, RR, the original client, ended his treatment with the petitioner. In September of 2020, the wife asked petitioner to write a letter which diagnosed her former spouse, as she believed him to be a danger to their children. Petitioner did write this letter, even though she was not appointed by any court to do so, nor asked to do so by the family court. The petitioner did not have RR's consent to prepare such a letter with disclosures of his mental health, nor was he aware of her actions. NR's attorney submitted petitioner's letter in a child custody hearing that was held the following month. Petitioner has agreed that for the purposes of a petition for modification, all allegations would be deemed true in the accusation. The accusation alleged gross negligence, failure to maintain client confidentiality, dishonest acts, and unprofessional conduct. The petitioner had failed to identify a conflict of interest in her treatment of RR and NR, and her subsequent actions, as well as her subsequent actions. She made inconsistent statements to the investigator and did not make any reporting to child protective agencies despite her safety concern for NR and RR's children. Further, the petitioner provided RR's therapy records to him, but the copy she sent was different than the copy on file at her office, and RR's initials, which accompany his request for records, appeared not to be his. Petitioner was required to comply with supervised practice, complete an education class on confidentiality, take a law and ethics course, pay cost recovery in the amount of $12,242, and reimburse the probation program. The petitioner is requesting to eliminate the supervision condition of her probation. A year and a half remains on her period of probation, and she is compliant with the terms of probation thus far. Your Honor, I can now move on to introducing our exhibit packet.
Please.
And my understanding is that the petitioners either did not or could not access Case Center. So I will share my screen with them and go through the petition packet with them.
Great, thank you.
So Exhibit 1, Your Honor, is the memo to the board members. This is a memo from Sabrina Barrera Ibarra, the probation analyst, which indicates the license status of the petitioner, as I've described, the discipline history, as I've described, as well as compliance with the probation program. We would like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 1.
Right, the December 18th, 2024 memorandum to the board is marked as Exhibit 1 for identification. Ms. Tolan, do you have any objection to 1 being admitted for all purposes?
No, I don't.
Okay, 1 is so admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification for Ms. Tolan. It indicates her license status as well as the disciplinary history dates. We'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 2.
The license certification is marked as Exhibit 2. Ms. Tolan, any objection to 2 for all purposes?
No, I don't.
2 is so admitted.
Exhibit 3 is the notice of hearing for today's hearing date that was sent to the petitioners, along with our notice of hearing as well, providing information about Case Center. We'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 3.
The notice of hearing is marked as 3. Ms. Tolan, any objection to 3 for all purposes?
No, I don't.
3 is so admitted.
Exhibit 4 contains the petition for modification of probation filed by the petitioner. And it includes any documents that the petitioner also attached as part of her petition. We'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 4.
The petition for modification with attachments is marked as 4. Ms. Tolan, any objection to 4 for all purposes?
No, it's fine. Thank you.
4 is so admitted.
Exhibit 5 is the supervised practice information sheet. And we'd like to mark this as Exhibit 5.
Right. The document is so marked. Ms. Tolan, any objection to 5 for all purposes?
No objection.
5 is so admitted.
And Exhibit 6 contains the disciplinary order from the stipulation as well as the underlying document, which is the accusation. We like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 6.
All right. The underlying disciplinary documents will be marked collectively as 6. Any objection to 6 for all purposes, Ms. Tolan?
No.
6 is so admitted.
So that's our exhibit. Thank you, Your Honor. We have nothing further to present other than reserve for questioning.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Tolan, now's your opportunity to testify. As I previously mentioned, and just to remind you, what the board is most interested in hearing is any rehabilitation you have undergone since the prior discipline of your license. So let me swear you in first. If I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. You may put your hand down. If I could have you start first by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Kathleen, spelled Kathleen. Middle name is Kay. Last name is Toland, T as in Tom, OLAND.
All right, thank you, Ms. Toland. Whenever you're ready.
Well, initially, I was going to go through and rehash and explain the situation again. I think I'll skip over a lot of that. A lot of it's pretty much, I don't want to really repeat too many things. And so I'll just go over a few points that I wanted to mention here. basically, what was taking place is I was working in a small community up in the mountains, Bloomsdale, California. And it's a mountain type community where everybody knows everybody. At that time, the police department knew who the CPA. I knew the police department was already involved in this case. I knew CPA was already involved in this case. And when I was involved in this case, yes, I did not report it because at that time, I guess it's just strictly, I was just so concerned about the children. Maybe I should explain a little bit further. I'm not going to go, I am going to go down. Please bear with me. All right. At the time, this gentleman seemed very loving and he was very charming at first. Shortly after the first session, he started showing a lot of rage, anger, and controlling nature. He was the type of person who had everything around where he really made me very confused about where to start and where was ended. He demanded that his wife join the session, and in the session, he would dominate all of the session. He would belittle her and try to use the Bible constantly to make his point. Just a moment here. What had happened when I was setting up her files, I had copied over his files to put on her files. I was not maintaining proper accountability for separate files. And so that's where I had copied over his initials. And this is what I tried to explain to my lawyer at that time. There were several things that I had just copied over. So therefore, that's where I got into the fraudulent situation, was with that. Also, too, was the fact is that before he came in, he did try to commit suicide. And at that time, I was really concerned with him and I was concerned about the children. And I do have an anxiety disorder, so please bear with me, everybody. So again, I'll read off of here. He tried to commit suicide again. He had been drinking and she found him with the children in the bedroom. This is the second suicide attempt. There were candles and there were pictures. He was asking each of them to look at the pictures and tell him what they would see and feel. They were extremely frightened. She was also extremely frightened. She was not sure he could take the kids to live, that she was not, she was afraid that he would take the children and maybe kill them first. And so finally she filed for a divorce. He went into rehab upon his sister's suggestion, who is a lawyer. Once he got out and moved around so that he could not be served papers. She wanted full custody. CPS nor the police were keeping the children safe. Her lawyer told her I could legally write a paper on her behalf to the courts. She was desperate and begging me to help her. I prioritized the children's safety over the possibility that I may lose my license. I was wrong and now living with the reality and consequences. Now looking back, I can see what had happened and why it happened, how I got emotionally reacted and suffered the consequences. I was wrong and I will not make this mistake ever again. And then I went on and said here that that how I required with my requirements. Number one, I did weekly sessions with my supervisor, having all my clients signed a form stating that they were aware of this. Number two, both my supervisor and myself submitted quarterly reports to the BBS as to the clients, and I was seen and compliant required to the BBS. Number three, I finished and sent my certifications to all the courses taken that was required of me. Fourth, I made all my financial requirements to the BBS on time. Please, thank you for bearing with me. There's a lot of notes here I did not even talk about. I am very nervous. Okay, so I went on and I wrote down, this is so far what it's cost me. Probation is $1,200 a year times 3. That's $3,600. Recovery cost was $12,242. My supervision cost at $120 a week, 68 weeks, has cost me $8,160. If I continue with the supervision, that would be another $10,560. Liability insurance went from $157 a year to $3,500 a year. That's $10,029 for liability insurance now. Approximately the cost of the courses were about $500. All of the insurance companies have dropped me, and I am self-employed. This accounts for basically 85% of my income. I have no other income but my Social Security income at $936 a month. And then I talked a little bit about my husband's situation and his finances, but I won't go into that. And then I talked about the approved courses that I took. Total of law and ethics was a total of 10 courses. That's 24 units. Confidentiality was a total of 4 more courses, and that was a total of 14 units. So I've taken so far 38 units. So I've taken 14 courses. And this is in conjunction with the courses that I have to take for my continuing ed, because you cannot utilize these courses for that. Okay, I wrote here, why can I be trusted to perform my duties? Number one, I've learned not to react, but to always stop and evaluate my situation. Always making sure that I am about to do is both ethical and legal within the scope of my practice. Number two, I will follow strict guidelines into my record keeping, never copying anything over using my own handwriting. Number three, I have done a lot of self-evaluation about my own morals and belief system. Now I know that nothing precedes the legal and ethical guidelines of my practice. Number four, I will not make any hasty decisions. If any part of anything is in question, I will get legal counsel from camp lawyers. Finally, this mistake had cost me a lot of time and money. Several times I thought about giving up and just retiring. I have discovered just how important my license means to me, and I will not do anything to jeopardize this. Okay, is there any questions? And again, I do have notes if anybody would like to have my further notes to this.
Okay, did you want to introduce them as an exhibit?
It doesn't, I don't know. Is that something that's normal procedure? I guess not. I just wanted to explain my situation.
Okay. Ms. Crawford, cross-examination?
So Ms. Toland, you've had supervised practice for about a year now?
A year and 4 months.
Year and 4 months, okay. And is it weekly for 1 hour?
Yes, it is.
Do you consult on every one of your patients with your supervisor?
Pretty much so, yes.
How do you know your supervisor?
I just met her. I believe I found her on the internet. I believe so. I'm not sure. I did not know her prior.
Okay. And how do you process cases with her when you're discussing your cases? What's the method that you go through to discuss issues that might be coming up?
The procedures, it just really depends. A lot of times I'll start out and I'll explain to her if I have new clients, and then we'll go into what happened that week with the clients that I did see. She's very thorough. She's very, very good.
Without disclosing any client confidentiality, what would be examples of things that you would discuss with her to receive some feedback or supervision about?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that once more?
Yeah, without disclosing any client confidences, what would be some issues that you would discuss with her on certain cases? that you felt the need to discuss with her?
The need to discuss. If indeed I felt, especially under the circumstances, if I would have another child situation coming up where the father would be involved, I would be very skeptical of perhaps even taking that client. I'm very cautious right now. I'm very, very concerned about taking any type of case right now involving children. And if there's a father involved that doesn't, to make sure the father's okay with the therapy, and then worrying about later down the road if he goes to court and those sort of things. So I'm very cautious about getting myself into future problems.
Okay. With the patients that you do have, what were some topics that you would discuss with the supervisor?
Oh, there's so many. I have so many different types of cases. It's not all, gee, I have couple counseling. I've got adolescent counseling. I've got just a variety of everything. So I would discuss each and everything. And she was very good about and helpful about giving me some advice.
Okay. Yes. Oh, sure. Were there examples that
Let me adjust. Answer you better.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Were there examples that that you can think of where she was able to provide you guidance that hadn't originally come to your thought of how to address with a patient?
Well, there's been so many. I'm sorry if I can't think of one particular one offhand, but there's been many, many cases. She's very, I can't even explain. She's got a lot of time, and she's a lot of experience. So she's been able to give me some really good ideas
Okay.
of different ways of handling different things and stuff.
Have you felt a benefit to her
Oh,
supervision?
I have, definitely.
Why do you want to terminate that supervision?
It's strictly a financial situation and also the time and money that it takes for me to get there and get back once a week. And financially, it just really is, I've had to borrow money. It's just been very financially difficult for me. And the reason I'm going into financially just shows that how much I really do enjoy my profession.
Have you explored other options that could be more or less financially draining to you and to continue the supervision you say that you are benefiting from?
I feel at this time I'm pretty much able to go on my own. I
Okay.
feel very comfortable with that, and so does she as well.
Okay. I also noticed in your petition that there was a question about if you've sought out psychotherapy, and you said it wasn't required and that it or needed. And the question I have about that is that you have mentioned that your emotional reactivity to that situation caused you to make a decision that was not in your best interest or the client's.
Yes.
So why do you determine that you didn't need any psychotherapy around that when it was your emotional reactivity that kind of got you into this difficult situation?
I think, well, even since then, I did a lot of self research within myself, but also too, I have had a lot of therapy based for this. I had a sister and a mother that was very, they were bullies and very emotionally abusive. And so I have a thing about bullies, and I've had that all my life, but I've been able now, especially now, that this has really cost me tremendously, numbs my license, that I know that I've got this handled now and under control.
What steps have you taken since your probation to get that under control, as you say? It sounds like this individual may have triggered some of that for you.
Well, I've done a lot of talking to various people about this, and I just feel, like I said, I'm sure I've got this part under control.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Tolan, did you have any other testimony you wanted to provide on your behalf?
No, I don't at this, I can't think of anything. Thank you for listening.
Great,
Uh,
thank you. So I'll next see if there's any questions from the board. Mr. Chairperson?
Yes, Ms. Tolan, thank you for being here. I know that it's difficult doing this testimony. I would like to go back a little bit to the exchange that you just had with our DAG. Can you repeat for me? I wasn't really clear on what you said about the relationship with your mom and your sister.
I wasn't planning on bringing this up. It's just I had a sister and a mother that were like two bullies. And so therefore I've always been the kind of person especially someone who's bullying children, I just get a little bit defensive with them. And
So,
so
so do you feel like that may have been one of the motivations
it
to?
was mostly, no, it's just strictly was fear for the children's safety at that time, because I knew this gentleman, I knew how dangerous he really was. And he already had, at that time, he had a court case against him for going in, and his daughter's boyfriend, he went in and totally destroyed his house because he caught them doing drugs there. And so he was already as it is, he was already, the police were quite aware of his and so was CPS, where he was very emotionally and physically abusive with his wife as well. So I just knew this gentleman. It was just strictly for safety of the children. I reacted to that.
Thank you. So kind of going back again to the question about why you didn't seek out your own psychotherapy.
Mhm.
Your testimony was that you felt that you had things under control.
Yes, I did.
Yet you're not going to take any cases that would have a similar profile because they would be triggering to you.
No, I'm cautious of getting myself in the same situation of any sort. And this is true of, I've talked to several also MFTs, and a lot of them are very afraid of taking on children who are in a situation between the husband and the father for this situation, same situation, whereas they may end up in court, and then it's his say against their say. And so they're just more cautious about that.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
Madam Vice Chairperson, any questions?
Thank you for being here. I have a couple of questions, just to dig a little deeper on some of the questions that the chair had for you. So in your mind, what would have been the better course of action to take that day?
Well, obviously, I should have at least tried to, I would have at least filed a report with CPS and with also too with the police department at the time to make sure that my legal situation is covered. I would have done that. I would have told her, no, I could not legally do this. I would have denied her that letter.
And then
I would deal with the consequences of the guilt of it.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's
get too-
okay, because I've, so this day, I don't know if he's hurt those children. So could have, so either way.
Since you are self-employed, what steps do you or would you take if you were no longer under supervision to provide a check on your decision-making and record keeping?
Well, if I have any questions whatsoever, I definitely would have no problems calling somebody, another therapist, or if it's a legal matter, I would get a hold of Camp and talk to a lawyer.
I think we talked about this a little bit, but sort of what part of your rehabilitation has really kind of helped you understand why you reacted the way you did that day? And then, is there anything else that you haven't shared with us already that you've done to work to address those issues?
I'm sure there will be once I leave you, but at the moment, no, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Great. Dr. Boyd, any questions?
I guess just a couple follow-up questions, if I can. I'm still trying to understand a little bit more. Maybe you can help me with this in terms of, I think I heard you say you're still working with couples, and you're also working with children too. Is that correct?
Mostly adolescents at the moment, yes.
Mostly adolescents, okay. And do any of the couples you work with have children?
Currently, I'm trying to think. Um, not at the moment, no.
Okay,
However, I have since this situation, just right now, right at the moment, I don't have anybody, no.
okay. And if things just were to go where maybe separation were to occur with any of these couples with children, I think there's a possibility that there would be some type of custody process involved, potentially for these children of these families, these couples that you're seeing. So I guess, how would you manage something like that? In other words, what would come up for you, if anything at all, should there potentially be some other type of custody dispute in the future?
You know, I don't know exactly how to answer that question. There could be all sorts of things that might come up. If there's ever a problem where there's a legal situation, I definitely would double check with the lawyer of Cam before I would make any kind of, but I've had so many courses now, it seems like I have pretty much a lot of the answers already. If I have any questions whatsoever, again, I'd refer myself to a camp lawyer.
Okay. So you feel like that would be something that you would be able to handle?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then I just wanted to follow up one more question. I know you mentioned that you feel like you've gotten a handle on your record keeping and your documentation, and I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit more about what that actually looks like.
Okay, initially what I had done was again, this gentleman wouldn't even answer. He would not sit down and rewrite anything. I would sit there and do an anxiety test with him. I'd do a Burns anxiety, a Burns depression test, and I'd have to ask him the questions. He wouldn't sit down and do anything by himself because he always wanted to talk and take control of every situation. So that's where a lot of the fraudulent came by, because he said, I never took that test and that isn't my check. Well, it's kind of hard to argue that point with him. So again, I would keep definitely separate records. Would be one for each one of them and one for together, a joint.
And so it sounds like that's the practices you're doing now, is keeping these
Well,
separate.
it would be the practice I would do now.
So for the couples that you're seeing now, are you seeing them conjointly, separately?
I'm seeing them together.
Okay. All right, no further questions. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Friedman, any questions?
Yes. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a public member, so I have a few questions.
All right.
First of all, when the father was attempting suicide, didn't that require you to do something at that time?
Well, the first time he tried to commit suicide, he was supposed to be in a session with us. And what he did was he called in and said he wasn't going to be there, that he had a gun, and that he was going to commit suicide. So his wife and myself were able to calm him down and to talk him out of suicide at that time. The second time that he tried to commit suicide, what had taken place, I heard this from his wife after the fact. And what he had done was he had barred himself into the bedroom, and he had the children, and he had pictures up, family pictures up, who's asking each child to sit there and tell him what each picture meant to them. And then there's candles going, and his wife stopped him from committing suicide. And each time she didn't know he had a gun, because at that time, supposedly the police had already taken all of his guns away. And so she came in and told me about this, and he did not deny it any of these times. And so immediately his sister, who was his lawyer, told him to go into rehab. So he went into rehab at that time. And then once he got out, he started moving around, so therefore she could not serve him with papers, divorce papers.
Also, you mentioned that the Child Protective Services was aware of
They
this.
were
case.
aware of this, yes.
But couldn't you have dealt, I mean, I'm very familiar with how Child Protective Services works. And unless somebody is literally in their face talking to them, they have too many cases, you know?
This is the
They can't
yes.
pay attention.
Mhm.
So didn't you have a responsibility at that time to like deal with Child Protective Services as opposed to dealing with the court?
I realize what you're saying. Everything was happening so fast. And what had taken place was, I got up to the letter at that time of writing the letter. That's when she was asking me like the next day to write that letter and telling me what took place and asking me to write the letter in conjunction all at one time.
Okay,
After the fact, I don't recall. I may have, to be honest, I don't recall.
Okay. I understand you're saying you don't want to get into a situation like this again, but
I can't imagine anyone ever being in this situation, let alone it happening again.
well, I
It
would
was
hope
very
not.
chaotic and a lot of crises were involved.
But most people that you're going to deal with probably have children.
I realize that. I'm not afraid of people having children. I was a little skeptical though when it comes to having a father who, because I have had this situation since where a father is just very demanding and wants me again
Ms. Tolan,
to,
can I just
Sorry.
caution you on
yeah,
the detail that you're giving
Yes.
about your clients?
yeah,
As we're here talking about
I agree.
breach of confidentiality and Board Member Freeman, if you please make sure we
Yeah.
keep our questions relevant to the discussion at hand about how we're maintaining confidentiality.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable with answering these questions too.
Well,
Getting a little too specific.
saying that you're not going to, would you say that the way you've solved this problem is to make sure that you don't have any clients who have children as an issue?
I'm saying I'm a little bit more hesitant. I'm going to find out a little bit more information. I'm a little bit more cautious now.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Huft, any questions?
Yes, thank you. You've said a couple times that you understand what went wrong, but I think I don't have a clear picture of your summary of what went wrong. Can you help clarify that?
Okay. Meaning that I understand now why I reacted so quickly. That's what I meant by, I reacted too quickly. And that's what I meant about, I understand what went wrong.
Let me clarify. People are not put on probation for reacting too quickly. So what specifically do you think that you did that was a breach of ethics?
Well,
Or-
yeah, both. I definitely breached confidentiality, and I understand that now. I'm put on probation because I breached confidentiality, and by copying things over from one file to another and putting someone's initials down, I was doing fraud. At the time, I didn't think it was fraudulent.
Is that the extent of your understanding of why you're on probation?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more to it.
There is. So also failing to report child abuse and neglect
Right. Which I've talked about.
to some degree, yeah. So help me understand the fraudulent signatures on the intake documents. You keep saying you've copied things, but help me understand what went wrong.
Well, number one, I copied things over. That was wrong. To try to explain this is very confusing. He had a copy of his initial file. Okay, I had the copy of his initial file, and what happened was like, I tried to explain, there'd be forms like, I had forms of depression and anxiety forms that I would sit there and try to give him a Burns anxiety test. So I would ask him the question, and then I would mark whether it's moderately, somewhat, a lot, or a lot. And I would actually make the check after asking the questions. He took that to believe those weren't his checks, so therefore I never gave him that form. I never gave him that test.
But it was more than just the Burns depression inventory. It was also an
But there was-
EMDR worksheet. It was also an intake form. It was also notice of privacy practices. How did that happen?
That was where I copied over.
Including his signature or initials.
Initial, yeah.
Okay. You also said, and I'll do my best to quote you, but feel free to correct it. I prioritized the children's safety. You also said, I knew this gentleman. I knew how dangerous he was. Why did you not report child abuse?
Prior to, again, I knew the CPS was already involved and they were already aware of that, is what I'm saying. I was wrong.
So am I understanding this correctly that because CPS was already involved, subsequent problems went unreported because you assumed they already knew about it?
I'm not quite sure that's true.
So can you repeat your answer? Why did you not report?
Once again, I can't justify me not reporting it. I'm just explaining to you, not trying to justify it. I'm just saying I was aware that they were already involved in this particular case, and I was wrong by not, again, reporting it. This is why I'm here today.
And I think I'm maybe missed an important part of your statement. Did you say that you would be hesitant to work with fathers again? Is that right?
Not just fathers, I'm talking about, it could be mothers as well. I was just a little bit hesitant to get involved in a case that I know that is that a court case would be almost inevitable in the situation where a mother and father are arguing over the custody of a child. I would be a little hesitant.
Yeah, but my reading of this doesn't indicate that you knew a court case would be inevitable anyways. They came to you for couples counseling.
Initially, I did not know, yes.
So you're telling me you would not work with people if you knew a court case would happen, but that's not the situation here.
I'm not saying I would not. I said I would be hesitant.
Okay. You said you didn't seek consultation or your own therapy because you felt you were in control of the situation. And you're now also reporting that you're safer to practice because you're in control of yourself and the work you do. How can we be confident that your self-appraisal is more accurate now?
Well, there's no way that you could possibly be more confident of that either way. No matter who it is, you have no idea for sure. There's no for sure of anything, of how anyone will react. I'm telling you that I've had enough courses, enough education, enough self-searching that I would definitely, I'm telling you that I don't believe I would never do that again. I have spent too much time, too much money, too much heartache for me to do this again.
And that you said, I would never want to do it again. What is the it specifically?
What we're talking about. I would never, again, break confidentiality. And I would definitely tell CPS or the police department about it.
Understood. And I want to revisit Dr. Boyd's question. Can you describe, to the best of your ability, what is different now in your couples therapy notes than a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Well, the difference is I'm keeping his files. If I'm seeing them separately and together, I'll keep files for him, files for her, and files together.
And that is what you are doing currently, is that correct? Or
That's
that
what I would be. Currently, I don't have that situation.
there are no couples or families that you're working with?
There are couples, but there's not a situation where they're normally, they're together.
Okay, understood. And you said you're still currently working with adolescents?
Yes.
Okay. All right, no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Ortega, any questions?
Yes, hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, I'm over here. So how often are you seeing your supervisor at the moment,
I'm seeing her on a weekly basis.
weekly basis? And would, and you want to eliminate it completely? You wouldn't want to reduce it?
I would like to eliminate it completely, and she also too feels as though I'm ready.
Okay. Um, One of the things that you mentioned at the beginning was that it's a small town and everyone knows each other.
That's a very small community.
So, now that you've taken courses in confidentiality and you've been through this experience, and it's still a small town where everyone knows each other, how are you, like, is there anything different that you, in how you're approaching confidentiality inside of this type of small town environment?
Well, now I'm down in Roseville, so I'm out of that situation, and now I have a lot more support systems down here. I've met other therapists, and I've gotten involved in things, and I have much more of a support system here than I do up there, and it's a different population down here than it is up in the mountains. and
Okay.
stuff.
Okay, so you're in a different environment altogether.
Yes.
And then do you see any, just from the conversation and questions here, do you see any concerns with like having your couples charts together now? Because things shift. You just also never know, right? When people will start to dispute or things come up, because we don't always know everything, right? Even if
Exactly.
we've been with people for years, so things can show up. And so do you feel that you are applying what you've learned about like documentation and work, especially working with couples, right? That there are different approaches to that to keep everyone's confidentiality safe, so that this doesn't happen again? Is there anything newly that you see inside of this conversation? Because you continue to keep that documentation in the same place.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what the question here is.
Okay, yeah. Long-winded question. I guess, do you see anything wrong, like anything that could go wrong with having the couples charts together at this time?
Well, keeping them together. I'm still a little bit confused
Okay.
here. What I do is I have, it's like, I have one for her, one for him, and then I've got a rubber band around them, and I keep them together. And then what I do is, on the notes, on the actual notes, I'll say, basically that they're together that day.
Okay.
And I'll put who's talking and who's talking at the time on my notes.
Okay.
So if she's talking, then I'll write her name and what she said, and then I'll write what he said, and then I'll write my own notes about the situation. Whatever notes that I need to know for me, because they're basically my notes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right.
Mr. Sovic, any questions?
Yes, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you.
And I want to check back with you. You were licensed in 2008?
Yes.
Okay. Between 2008 and before this case came together for you, how often would you seek consultation?
Before this situation, couples? Oh, many times, all the time.
Okay, so what would that look like for you? How do you seek consultation on cases?
How do I see consultations on cases?
Mhm.
Well, I'm not quite sure again what that question is.
So you're working on a case with clients
Right.
and some things come up that you have questions about, maybe things you haven't experienced before, or some things that
So
you're
how
finding
do I
you're reactive to. How do you, for
seek
yourself, seek case consultation?
Okay.
Or have you since in this time before, from 2008 till this case?
Well, if I get something I haven't had before, which it just seems rare now, because I do have all different types of, I don't have one particular type of individual that I see. And normally the cases I've seen others before very similar. If I get myself in a situation, then now I do have people that I can call up and say, hey, what would you do in this situation?
But
what-
previously, your history was to not seek case consultation.
That was very difficult once again, because I was up in the mountains, so I didn't have any peer groups
Okay,
up in the mountains. I was the only private practice person up there.
okay. When this situation was playing out,
Mhm.
did you seek any case consultation?
No, I did not, and that was an error that I made too.
Did
I
you?
reacted.
Okay, and I think I know this next one, but I'll be clear. Did you consult with CAMFT?
With camp, no, I did not.
Did you consult with your malpractice insurance?
At that time, no.
And did you
Consult with
consult?
anybody. That was a big, big mistake.
Did you consult, not report, but did you consult with CPS?
On this particular case, no, because once again, CPS, they just didn't want to deal with anything. They were way overloaded. And it's really, really difficult, like I said, up in the mountains.
Mhm.
And with the police are having problems with CPS. CPS is having problems with the police. And so everybody knew this individual and knew that he was dangerous. And so I was just sort of reacting again. And that was totally a mistake. That's why I'm in the situation I'm in.
You had mentioned, I believe when you were sharing from your notes earlier, that you now have a thing where you will stop and evaluate. Can you expand on that concept to help me understand that a little bit more?
But definitely there's a red flag here. And when it says, hey, something's wrong, I'm going to, regardless, I'm going to stop it. I'm not going to react to anything that fast. Something is not that critical that I can't wait 24 hours or so. Wait a while anyway to stop and look at something. I'm not going to react because of fear of children, fear of somebody getting hurt.
And in that stop and evaluate process that you're sharing, would that then trigger a potential decision to reach out for consultation?
Yes.
Okay. And you've mentioned that you now currently feel you have a stronger professional support system. Could you describe that professional support system for me?
Well, I do know a few therapists in the area, and I've met a few. And then I still have my supervisor, which probably I could reach out to her after I leave. We have a good rapport.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Uribe, any questions?
Good morning. So what are ways that you currently use to cope and take care of yourself?
Okay, well, I like to, I like the color. I know that sounds, pardon me? Yeah, there's a lot of things I like to do. I have 2 dogs I like to play with, and I have a husband that I do things with, and then I like to draw and color, and I like to take walks, and I exercise, and a variety of different things. Mostly I try to get out.
Okay. And you also had mentioned, so I'm wondering like other, because I mean, it sounds like, okay, well, hold on, let me just go to the next question. And it was kind of like what was mentioned by, I'm sorry, Mr. Sovic. So can you walk me through like a questionable situation where you're not sure what to do about your clients? What would you do?
Again, if I don't know what to do with this client, I would just stop and I would see if I could find somebody who has a similar situation, make a few phone calls and analyze it, and then make a few phone calls, etc. If it's a legal matter, I would definitely call a camp lawyer.
So you're saying make phone calls to,
Like, it would be like my supervisor or somebody else, another professional.
okay, do you have specific, I'm not asking for specific names.
Yeah, I
Are there
have a
people that
couple,
you're
yes.
thinking of?
I
Okay.
do.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Dr. Walker, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Tolan, I have one question for you, okay? You clearly and repeatedly testified that you want to terminate your supervision due to associated costs related to somewhat of a hardship for yourself.
Yes.
I've heard you say that, okay?
Yes.
I want to state that consumer safety is imminent in this matter.
Mhm.
So I would go so far to say that it's the board's responsibility to ensure that the
Yes.
consumers receive services from safe practitioners,
Mhm.
okay?
Yes.
So my question to you is, why do you believe that you are not a threat to consumers?
Again, like I had stated in the last, I have taken so many courses of law and ethics and confidentiality. And I know now that before I would stop and I would not react again. I would seek professional help. I would get legal counsel. I would check with other people if I have any kind of question whatsoever. And I think I've done enough work that I'm definitely, and I just love my practice. I will not do anything to jeopardize losing my license again.
Okay, and just to follow up,
Okay.
this realization,
Mhm.
has this come due to your probation that you've received thus far? So this is
Yes.
recent coursework, recent,
It has.
yeah, okay,
Yes, it
recent help.
has.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I believe I've checked with all the members. I'll check to see if there's any members who've subsequently thought of additional questions. All right, seeing none. Ms. Tolan, thank you very much for your testimony. You're excused as a witness. So next, and I believe you do not have any other, you have no other evidence you want to offer, if I recall correctly?
No, I just want to thank everybody for listening to me, and I'm sorry about my anxieties and my nervousness. So,
Okay, thank you. So I'll take closing statements or closing arguments. Ms. Crawford? All right, Ms. Tolan, do you wish to make a closing argument?
no, I pretty much have wrapped it up once again. The final thing that I had stated here was number one, I have learned not to react, but to always stop and evaluate my situation, always making sure that what I'm about to do is both ethical and legal within the scope of my practice. Number two, I will follow strict guidelines into my record keeping, never copying anything over or using my own handwriting. Number three, I have done a lot of self-evaluation about my own morals and belief system. That now nothing comes before or precedes the guidelines of the practice, the legal and ethical guidelines of the practice. Number four, I will not make any hasty decisions. If any part of any part of the issue is in question, I will get legal and professional help, or I will get a hold of camp lawyers. Finally, this mistake has cost me a lot of time and money. Several times I thought about going up and just retiring. I have discovered just how important my license means to me and will not do anything to jeopardize this ever again. So, thank you once again.
All right, Ms. Tolan, thank you very much for your testimony and for being here. The record's closed, the matter is submitted, and we are off the record. And just a reminder, if you would have a seat in the audience and just wait for a moment until the reporter has the form prepared for you. And then you can take the form and you're free to leave, or you're also free to stay and observe the rest of the open session of the meeting.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Do you want to take a break?
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll return at 10:25.
Hello, everyone. This is David, the moderator. I just wanted to thank our online participants for your patience. We're going to be just a little bit longer before we reconvene. Hang tight. We'll get started soon.
Certain combinations where I can write 2 and 3 words in one stroke, so that cuts down on my yes. There's certain combinations of words that come up and I can just.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I will hand it over to the judge.
All right, thank you. So the next matter we will call is Jennifer Ann Mitchell. Sure.
Ms. Mitchell did file some additional information in Case Center, but my understanding is that the board does not have access to Case Center. So staff has indicated they might be able to make copies of these for the board members so they have access during deliberations, but we may need to delay this hearing until maybe after lunch so that they can get the copies. However you'd like to proceed.
I'll defer to Mr. Chairperson.
What's the content? Is the content?
I can, Ms. Mitchell explained to me what was contained in it. Do you want to explain what the exhibits are?
Sure, there was
We're
just
not on the record, right, Your Honor?
No, we're not on the record. Thanks.
it was just kind of supplemental information to kind of what I'm saying today. I was assuming that you could use them for deliberation later, so I don't know if they're necessary now, but it was just some screenshots of the meditation I've done, the mindfulness class I've completed, a list of some negative impacts of probation, just for, for reference, some highlights of things during probation that I highlighted, and then kind of a couple of sheets of summarizing all the therapeutic work I did in some examples, just concisely, so.
So not, is it, excuse me, is it information you're going to testify about?
Not specifically what's in there, it's more concise, but holistically, yes, you'll hear most of it.
It sounds like it's relevant to me, something that I would want to read
Prior
in
to
deliberation.
prior to hearing testimony, or are you okay receiving it for deliberation?
For deliberation, I think I want to have it.
Okay. So then with that being said, you're okay with her testifying now and not switching out with the next petitioner?
Yeah, and again, I'm very process driven, so as long as it doesn't interrupt the process, which it wouldn't, because we would take that information into consideration when we're deliberating. So makes sense to
Okay,
me.
sure.
If everyone's
Then we
okay
can
with
move forward.
All right.
I would just say as long as she speaks to it and then we can see the hard copy.
I don't have internet.
On further consideration, we're going to hold off and switch off the petitioners and have you do your hearing after lunch.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Just so make sure we have all the materials available to us to review
Sure.
while you're discussing them for us.
Sure.
So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Judge. We appreciate that. Thank
Yes,
you.
of course. And so we'll take Lisa Marie Sanchez.
Minutes? 2 hours? How long do we take for lunch, Steve? Yeah, between 12:30 and 1.
Okay.
Yeah, be back around 12:30.
Yeah, I heard you.
All right, so let's go ahead and go on the record. And Mr. Court Reporter, I believe there's a statement you'd like to make regarding a new law for the requirements for court reporters. So if you would, please.
Yes, my name is James Peters and my license number is 10,063. Thank you.
Right. So we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for modification of probation by Lisa Marie, middle initial M as in Mary, Sanchez. It is agency case number 2002-003-002072, OAH number 2025-010-523. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. Chairperson?
Here.
And Vice Chairperson?
Present.
Ms. Bailey? Dr. Boyd?
Present.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
And Mr. Huft?
Here.
Ms. Ortega?
Present.
Ms. Ranasinghe? Or excuse me, Mr. Ranasinghe? Mr. Sovik?
Present.
Ms. Uribe?
Present.
And Dr. Walker?
Present.
Let the record reflect that a quorum is present. Next, if I could take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, and the petitioner, Ms. Sanchez, is also present, and she's representing herself. As you may have heard me say at the beginning of the prior matter, just from a procedural standpoint, this is the hearing on your petition for modification of probation. After I go over the procedural layout, Ms. Crawford will provide a summary statement of your license history and introduce your petition and other documents. And then after she does that, we'll turn the matter over to you to take evidence in support of your petition. Did you have any witnesses you wanted to call other than yourself?
No.
And did you have any documents you wanted to offer other than what was provided with your petition?
No, I believe I provided enough.
Okay. And so just to remind you that when you do testify, what the board is most interested in hearing is about any rehabilitation you have undergone since your license was disciplined. So the prior discipline has been established and there isn't need to relitigate it. You'll hear Ms. Crawford in her summary statement give a summary of the prior discipline just to provide context. If you feel providing some context to explain your rehabilitation is helpful, then you're welcome to do so. But again, we're not here to relitigate the prior discipline. And then after you provide your testimony, Ms. Crawford will ask questions. After she finishes asking her questions, you'll have an opportunity to provide any additional testimony that you may have thought of, if any. And then Ms. Crawford will ask questions again, and that back and forth until both of you are done. And then the board may ask questions. And then after that, I will take summary closing arguments from each side, and then the matter will be submitted and the board will deliberate over your petition in closed session later today. So a decision won't be issued today, but will be issued, you'll receive one in the mail in the future. And then last, after the conclusion of the hearing, the court reporter will have a form for you. So if you just have a seat in the audience while he prepares that, that's in case you want to have you want to order a copy of today's transcript. That will have the information you need to go about doing so. And then once you receive that form, you are welcome to leave. Or I think we'll be breaking for lunch after that, but you're also welcome to return after lunch for the remainder of the open session if you like.
Okay, understood.
Do you have any questions?
No.
All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Ms. Crawford, your summary statement or documents, whichever you prefer first.
Thank you, Your Honor. The petitioner was issued an associate marriage and family therapist registration on December 14th of 2023. The registration was promoted to a licensed marriage and family therapist license on November 15th, 2024. The license is current and active and will expire on November 30th of 2026. A statement of issues was filed on August 11th of 2023 due to petitioner's conviction in February 2023 for driving while under the influence of alcohol with a blood alcohol content of 0.159%. She was ordered to 15 days in jail, 3 years probation, to complete a drinking driver program and pay fines and restitution. The conviction occurred after petitioner was arrested for driving and colliding with a fire truck. Officers responding to the accident observed petitioner to have obvious signs of intoxication. Based on mitigation evidence, which are also contained in the petitioner's packet, a stipulated settlement was reached and became effective on December 14th of 2023, which granted petitioner an associate marriage and family therapist registration and placed petitioner on 3 years of probation. Petitioner was required to participate in psychotherapy, take an education course in substance use, attend a dependency support program, abstain from substances, and submit to testing. Petitioner is compliant with the terms of her probation. She is seeking a modification of her probation terms to reduce the frequency of her biological fluid testing to once per month and to eliminate the dependency support program requirement. Petitioner's probation is due to expire on December 13th of 2026, and over half of petitioner's probation period still remains. Your Honor, I can go through our exhibits at this point, and I will share my screen with the petitioner.
Please do so. Thank you.
Exhibit 1 is the memo to the board from probation analyst Sabrina Barrera Ibarra. It provides the board with information regarding the license status of the petitioner, her disciplinary history, as I indicated, her current petition, as well as compliance with the board's requirement. We'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 1.
All right, the January 7th, 2025 memorandum to the board is marked as Exhibit 1. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No.
Thank you. 1 is so admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the notice of hearing sent to the petitioner by the board, as well as a notice sent to the petitioner by our office as well. We'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 3.
Right, the notice of hearing is so marked. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 3 for all purposes?
No.
3 is so admitted.
Exhibit 4 contains the petition for modification filed by the petitioner, as well as the attachments that the petitioner included in her petition. We'd like to mark that and introduce it as Exhibit 4.
The documents are collectively so marked. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 4 for all purposes?
No.
4 is so admitted, and I believe you may have inadvertently skipped 2.
I thought I skipped something. Exhibit 2 is the license and registration history certification for the petitioner. I would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 2.
Right, that document so marked. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 2 for all purposes?
No.
2 is so admitted.
I believe we're on Exhibit 5. That is the psychotherapy information sheet and release of information. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 5.
The document is so marked. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 5 for all purposes?
No.
5 is so admitted.
Exhibit 6 contains the underlying documents, disciplinary documents, which consist of the statement of issues, the stipulated settlement, and looks like that may be yes, those are the 2 documents.
All right, so since they were uploaded separately into case files or case center, I was going to mark 6 as the statement of issues, and then 7 consists of the stipulated settlement and underlying disciplinary documents. Ms. Sanchez, any objection to 6 and/or 7 for all purposes?
No, sir.
All right, both are so admitted.
That's all for our documents, Your Honor, and we would just reserve on questioning.
All right, so Ms. Sanchez, now's your opportunity to testify. If I could have you raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And just a reminder that what the board is most interested in hearing about is any rehabilitation you have undergone since the discipline of your license or the issuance of the probationary license. If you would first, however, start off by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Yes, so it's Lisa Marie, that's all one word, and it's Lisamarie. Ready for the last name?
Yes.
Okay, and then it's Sanchez, Sanchez.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning. So I'm gonna not make the mistake of what I saw happening. I'm gonna stick to the facts. So rehabilitation, I submitted that I have completed my CEUs that were required. I had actually submitted them prior to even meeting my probation officer. I completed them. So she said, wow, I wish I had other probationees like you. I had also completed my 3 months DUI program. I also paid all my criminal fines of $18.20. I also completed my AWP of 9 days. I did that at the dog pound. I have also gotten my driver's license reinstated after having a blower installed into my car. I had paid my probation fees that were due in December of last year. I have been in therapy prior to the decision of the board. I really wanted to emphasize that. I put myself in therapy over this before I even got denied my AMFT license. It is something that I have never denied taking ownership for this offense, and all of the fallout, what I did in jeopardizing the public and making very impulsive decisions. So I, again, wanted to emphasize that that is something that I knew I needed, and that is why I am not asking for the therapy to be reduced or eliminated, because I would like to continue that for my own. I also been in the substance abuse treatment. The option was group. I'm a therapist. I know what group. I can sit there and just kind of observe. I purposely chose individual substance abuse treatment one-on-one. So the spotlight was on me. So I got more individualized treatment so I could really take a look into myself as to why I allowed this event to happen. But working with her, I have, her and myself have talked. A lot of the things that I would still need to work on can be done in therapy. I think that I don't need to have both. So 3 times a week, therapy and substance abuse at this time. That is why I'm asking for the elimination of that. Because the lady that I do go to, she's certified through the state, but she has no licensure in substance abuse. So I feel more comfortable pursuing that with my current therapist because she is licensed. And also, I had been granted an expungement through Stanislaus County for this case in November of last year. So that unfortunately doesn't, I know, have a say on my current probation terms, but I did want to show that I continually have been making an effort to rehabilitate, so I submitted that as well. I also have been doing the oral testing at random. I set my alarm about 5 o'clock every morning. I check in, I do my test, and I FedEx it. I have never failed a test. They've all been clean. The only reason that I'm asking for that to be down to once a month is the financial that this has all cost. I am a single mother of an autistic child, and unfortunately, when you run my license, you see the probation term. So I get denied certain particular jobs because of the probation. So I'm just kind of stuck staying at a lower level pay due to being on this probation. I also would like to go into a life event that had happened a year ago this month, in which that if I truly had a substance abuse issue, that would have broke me. My son's father passed away and I had to unplug him. And so the circumstance surrounding that, if I truly, truly had a substance abuse, I would have tested dirty. And I tested while I was at the hospital unplugging him and afterwards. So I think that attests to that I do have a handle on this, and this was an isolated incident. I did hear you asking earlier, what are some things that the other individual thinks that they would need to work on? I would like to state some of the things that I worked on with my therapist in particular that we've been targeting, which is impulsive decision-making, peer pressure, anxiety management. I never had anxiety until after this, emotional regulation, self-awareness, positive coping skills versus negative coping skills. And I am kind of a joking person, so now I celebrate with food and not alcohol.
Anything further you wanted to say, Ms. Sanchez, at this time?
No, not at this time. I was taking my notes. I think I'm good.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Crawford?
Ms. Sanchez, how often do you currently test?
So it was dropped down at my year to 3 times a month, but prior to that, it was 4 times a month, so once a week.
Okay. How long were you testing for 3 times a month?
Just since December 12th, when it got modified. So about 2 months now.
Okay. And so before it got modified, you filed this petition to reduce it to 1 time a month?
No, I wasn't eligible till my year. So it happened concurrently.
Okay. But you would still like to go down to 1 time a month?
Due to financial, unless you guys have a program that would pay for them, because they switched from another program and now it's even more expensive than when I started. They lost, I guess, a contract with, it used to be called Vault, and now it's called something else, and they're even more expensive to buy the test.
So how much is the test?
Well, okay, so I order 6 because they tack on a $25 delivery fee. So the max you can order is 6, and it's about 400 and something odd dollars for those 6.
Okay, so that 6 would cover you for 2 months as it is right now?
Yeah.
$400.
Mhm.
Okay.
If you were to buy them individually or just say for a month, then it's even more because you have to pay that fee twice. So that's why I do it in bulk.
Okay. And where do you do the actual testing?
So right now, they were having us observed by live people, but now that they switched, it's a phone app. It's called the Proof app. And so essentially I check in if it, like today, I actually test today, I found out. So after this, I would go home, I'd set up the kit on a table and you're recorded through an app. And then there's people that observe it and they flag it if they see anything like anyone coming in the room, or if they don't see you properly swabbing your mouth or things of that nature. And then you put it in a FedEx kit and mail it.
And it's a saliva swab is how you test?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about the dependency support program that you were involved in that you'd like to now terminate?
Yes, so I go through prodigal sons and daughters. I think I submitted, she had wrote a letter on my behalf. Let me see. Yes. So she's essentially the head adult program director there, and we do one-on-one substance abuse counseling versus groups. Again, that was due to my own choice. I really wanted to center on to why I did this. Drinking has never been an issue with me, but I will say I celebrated in the wrong manner, and I chose to make an impulsive decision. I guess I had the mindset that I would be okay. And because I didn't have much history with drinking, I didn't understand how it processes through your kidneys and about 30 minutes later, and how the effect can intensify. And I had recently lost about 132 pounds. And I also didn't realize the weight difference in processing alcohol. So I've worked on all that with her, getting more psychoeducation based on substance abuse and things of that nature. But I'm going to tell you, even when I'm off in 3 years, I'm done drinking. That was like, I have never made such a poor decision in my life. When I was initially denied my AMFT, I thought I just threw my entire life away, my 10 years of schooling. I was devastated. The fact that it was going to be taken from me over a one night decision. So I also saw the impact on my son. I've seen all the impact on my clients and my job, rolling the dice and having somebody on probation working for them, right? I've seen the fallout that it takes on others, not only myself. I will never do this again.
With your rehab program, how often do you attend?
So right now it's twice weekly.
Okay.
I'm asking to not have to do that. I think my therapist is capable of incorporating that.
When did you start that program?
That was after the probation, so it would have been in December, around December 14th of last year.
Of 2024?
Well, it would have been 2023, sorry.
Okay. So you've been going for at least about a year?
Oh, yeah.
Was it more frequent before at any point, or has it always been twice weekly?
No, that was the settlement
Okay.
that my lawyer had worked out. I know they initially wanted 3 times a week, but we settled on 2.
And what have you learned there specifically in the dependency program that has helped you with this case?
I think that I would say addiction in general, right? So addiction can be anything. It can even be food, like I was stating. It can be other things. It doesn't just have, so she's taught me that psychoeducation around that. Like I said, the weight, like all the factors that I didn't think of long term, because I made an impulsive decision that night. I drank and I drove, and I wasn't thinking of the long term effect or the effect on my family or my son or financially. So we really processed that, how substance abuse, it can affect, not only the substance abuse user, but everyone around them, and the ways that it can do that.
So did you not understand at that time that how alcohol was going to affect you, having two drinks would affect you in driving? Or was it that you just didn't take the consequences into consideration?
I would say both. I think, like I said, with the weight loss that I had, I used to be 300 pounds and I hadn't drank. I never drank. So when I did drink, I could not handle the amount that I thought I could from prior experience. And then also not thinking long term, thinking it's a short drive, you can make it home. And that was the dumbest thing in the world. And to be honest, I think one of the lawyers that were representing the board, you know, they said, well, you also put the public in danger. I think the realization of that, you know, it's not just me, it's just not just my son. He could have lost both parents in 1 year, right? So I, again, take full ownership and I see how it can be a ripple effect.
Why, other than you believe what you're learning can be incorporated through your psychotherapist, why else are you seeking to terminate the dependency support program?
Because I have to flex on my work schedule, and that also impacts me because of the hours and the time slot she has for the individual therapy slot.
So it's impacting your work schedule and your ability to
It's-
attend therapy?
It's in a, not therapy, the substance abuse individual, it's in a different town than I work in. And
I
so I have to leave early. And so I also lose out on hours and pay to be able to make it there. So that's another financial impact when I think like the therapist can also just do both.
Okay, so your dependency support program has an individual therapy component to it, as well as a group component.
The groups I do not participate in.
Okay.
I only do the individual, and that was by my choice, because again, I've used to run groups. I know that you can just sit there and observe and get credit. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the light on me. I wanted to take full ownership. If anything, I have punished myself more than probably the board in the fact of like, I really wanted to dive into, you'd have to know my characteristics. This is not me. And so racking my brain on why did you do this? How could you do this?
Did you participate in anything in addition to the dependency support, like, or during dependency support, like AA or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
The
And
DUI 3-month classes, they were every week as well. That was separate. That was through Stanislaus County's requirement of rehabilitation.
what benefits did you gain from that program?
To be honest, I often chimed in to correct some of the things because the person facilitating it at the time, I didn't think what should have been facilitating it. So I think I was able to share from this lady and my own knowledge and help others that way. I really think that Stanislaus County should look into who they let groups facilitate those kinds of things, because I did often chime in to correct some of the statements that were being made.
You said you used to facilitate groups. What kind of groups did you facilitate?
So I used to facilitate coping skill groups at a homeless empowerment center. I've also facilitated, I used to work with NAMI. I used to be a public speaker. And so I would parent support groups. I would facilitate those. I've had a very long mental health background as far as working. So yeah.
And what are some of the benefits that you've gained from your individual counseling?
Therapy?
Yes.
Okay. With her, I think it's impulsive decision making, peer pressure. I would say it's replacement. So like I said, now I substitute that with food. It was kind of looking into myself, like, why did you feel the need for you guys to go out and drink to the success to celebrate? So now, well, what can we do differently? So like a replacement therapy, right? And then also that it's okay to say that's not you and you don't have to go along with the program and to fit in or to celebrate like other people do. I will also say, because of so much has went on in my life aside from this, the board probation, I also work on anxiety management, as I stated, boundaries with family members. I've had my own personal things going on. So I'm very transparent with her, and I'm always constantly asking, not only for clinical skills, but feedback on, do you think I handled this okay?
Mm-hmm.
because I will say this has also taught me empathy. Like I said, you would have to know me. I kind of thought I had a hierarchy. Like I would never get a DUI. I never had a traffic ticket before. This has humbled me. So it made me a better therapist in the fact of that humility. So now when I do see clients, I'm no better than them. I'm equal. I'm in it with you.
You submitted a safety center alcohol and drug assessment form. What was the origination of this form? Why did you submit this?
That was again from Stanislaus County. They would rank you on like what they thought your severity of substance abuse was. And she had stated there that she believed it was an isolated incident. So once you had completed the program, it was kind of like her opinion. She had also hand wrote me a letter as well. I did not submit that one. I kind of forgot about that one.
Was this the DUI offender program? Okay. And you filled this out.
It was their assessment tool. They did a pre and a post.
Okay. And it was pretty close in time. Your conviction was in February. You filled this out in March 2023.
Yes.
So about
I try to be very on the ball. That's
you tried to be very
on the ball with things
Oh,
and
okay.
completing everything. I just wanted to complete everything.
And I bring up the time because you just said that you kind of had a more elevated thought about your integrity and where you stood, and this has been a humbling experience. So I go to the risk assessment, which is contained on page 3 of this form.
I don't know if I have it.
Let's see, that's going to be in Exhibit 1, Exhibit 4.
I don't. Sorry, I submitted a lot. On which page? Page 3?
I think it was page 3 of that form. Okay, you're looking at it exactly. So something that struck me when I looked at it was you didn't have under part 1, you did not have a lot of yeses, but what you did mark yes to were things that were objectively desirable. For example, you have a strong and clear faith in life. Your life is happy as it should be. You're moderate in your habits. You pretty much like everyone you know. You're inclined to be serene and relaxed. And if you look at the following page, 0 to 4 yeses mean you have a low risk of risk of alcohol problems. Some of the things you marked no to would be, I feel alone in the world, and you've indicated you've gone through some very, very difficult things in your life, especially the loss of your husband. You've marked no to, sometimes I go out of my way to avoid people I dislike. To me, that seems like, I think we all kind of do that. And the reason I bring that up is, do you feel that at the time you filled this out, you were experiencing that humbleness you ultimately came to realize, or you were kind of still holding yourself to this higher pedestal you wanted to remain on?
So first, I wanted to say he wasn't my husband. He was my son's father.
Okay.
And second, I didn't fill this out. It was all done online. So it was a person asking me questions. I got this via email after the fact. So I couldn't have known this last page until after the fact, like what you were stating earlier.
Okay.
And I have a big support system. I was raised by my grandparents and they're still actively in my life. They're a big reason why I am resilient in what I do. And I think in my personality, I mean, avoiding people that I don't like, I mean, high school, maybe, I don't, I just do my job at this point. I see clients as much as in and out as possible, like coworkers. I try to be a team player. If I have one in particular, hopefully she's not watching. She does know when she's in a mood, I know to go to my office, but that's, that's just interactions on a daily basis. But I mean, to say that, yes, I will say that this was very early on in my rehabilitation. This was one of the first steps. Am I more humble now to answer you specifically? Yes, I am.
So where do you feel that, since this was primarily for a risk assessment for alcohol use, where do you feel where do you feel that when things are getting you down and they're difficult and you're experiencing difficulty in your life, I know you've said sometimes now you celebrate with food, how else do you kind of address those head on without going to alcohol?
So I also have I do exercise. So we all know that exercise can give endorphins. So that has been something that I continually do. I have healthy friends that also have abstained from alcohol to support me and themselves for their own reasons too. So I do lean on them. I'm in a group chat with some of them. I also have, like I said, some really good coworkers. Sometimes we have to avoid few times one another. I go on hikes with my son. So we get out in nature, get in the vitamin D and things of that, like that. I used to shop, but now I really can't do that. But I do practice other things to keep me happy. But I will say, my therapist is to the point, like I'm very comfortable with her that I know she's a phone call away as well. So when you mentioned that deep dark, and that was when my son's father passed, he was actually murdered and I had to unplug him. That was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my whole life. And so I did lean on her particularly because I felt like other people weren't going to understand where I was coming from because we were separated. We weren't together, but that doesn't mean I didn't love him. So it was really solidifying the end with that.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right, Ms. Sanchez, is there any further testimony you wanted to provide on your behalf?
No.
Okay, so next I'll turn it over to the board for any questions. Mr. Chairperson?
Thank you for being here. I have no questions.
Madam Vice Chairperson?
Thanks for sharing your journey and story with us. Just two quick questions. Just checking back in. If you said it, I apologize. I know we're not doing an early termination of probation or anything today, but just a question of when you reach the end of your probation, do you think you'll resume some moderate level of drinking, or is this a new lifestyle for
This
yourself?
is a new lifestyle, and I will self-disclosure, I am also seeing someone in which he is also abstaining for a different reason, but we do not ever see ourselves drinking again.
And then I would assume the same, you would keep going to therapy at the conclusion as well. It sounds like that's been super helpful.
Yeah,
for you.
because there's been other, like I said, life things that have happened along. So yes, I do want to continue the therapy.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, any questions, Dr. Boyd?
None for me, thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Friedman?
I have no questions, but thank you very much for being here. Actually, I have just one question. What do you consider your sobriety date to be?
So the day of the crash. So I believe it was the night before Father's Day. So I want to say it was June 19th. Yes. 2020, 2022,
2022?
2022, I believe.
That's it. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Huft, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. The letter from Priscilla does not talk about probation. I'm curious what the prompt you gave her was.
The Priscilla? Sorry. Sabrina?
Page 41 of this packet. I'm writing this reference at the request of Lisa Marie Sanchez. In my capacity as a teacher at Safety Center, the bottom says Priscilla Garcia.
Oh, okay. So that was the person that did the assessment. Sorry, I've endured a lot of people.
Sure, understandable. And so I'm just curious what the prompt was. What did you tell her to write?
I didn't. That was originally when I was trying to fight to get my AMFT because I originally was denied it. So I asked her if she could write her opinion and submit it to my lawyer. At the time, I had a lawyer representing me.
Got it. Understood. Thank you. Can you provide evidence of a recent time where you appropriately worked through what previously could have been an inappropriate impulsive decision?
Hmm. Okay. You're having me think on this one. I want to give you something good. You know, I always keep wanting to tie everything back to my son's father's death, but I don't want to take up all of your guys' time because the circumstances around it frustrates me. Because it was a minor who did this, and so I was very angry because of the age. 2 weeks away from being 18, so you get a slap on the wrist for taking someone's life. I really wanted to reach out to the family. I wanted to go above and beyond, but I did not. Again, I utilized the therapy at the time. I mean, if you want a really, really recent, I will say on the way here, a lot of people cut me off coming with traffic and stuff. So, you know, it's just deep breathing. This is Sacramento. It's not the 209. That kind of things happen very frequently. But I will say, you know, impulsivity is something that I'm learning to think it through, think all the way through, think about your child, think about your family. Because I remember the look on my grandma's face. Never again.
Excellent. Thank you. You've talked about insight into anxiety management, emotional regulation, coping skills, given an example of impulsive decision management, soliciting feedback from your therapist, wanting ongoing feedback after the termination of probation, ongoing sobriety after termination. Are we missing anything else that you think gives a more complete, holistic picture of your work as a therapist and safety to consumers?
I just wish you guys personally knew me because the people that do know I will never do this again. And it's shocking that I did this to begin with. It's just not in my nature.
Yeah, excellent. No more questions. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ortega, any questions?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Sovik?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions. I wanted to try and understand some pieces of this puzzle from a slightly different perspective for myself. And I'm reflecting back and looking at your application for your AMFT and then your journey to becoming licensed. And it looks like on here that was about a year process-ish.
So Slightly over, I would say. Slightly over.
Okay, so a little over a
Yeah.
year
Mhm.
from your amped to your full license.
Yes.
So that's a really quick process for a lot of people. A lot of my associates, it's 2.5 years. So that's like a really concise time frame. Would you say that you are a person who just like sees a problem, resolves it, gets on, puts in the hours, makes it happen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's called atypical. I'm like, I was here way early. Like, I just, that's my personality. That's what I was saying. If you guys knew me as a person, I'm like, okay, this is what they said I have to do. This is what I got to take care of. Like, I was mad because the AWP wouldn't let me do it any earlier than the time that I was supposed to surrender. I was like, but I can do it now. So it's how I am.
Okay. Because that's actually where my question comes. This idea from this really traumatic usage moment to clarity also seems really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious about your observation on that.
Trauma. I mean, again, that when I got the letter being denied, I was like, oh my God, there went all your blood, sweat, and tears to rehabilitate. So another thing that you may not know about me is I had childhood trauma. And so I think I fought to be here today for many, many reasons. And I was not going to give up on my dream. I went into debt to hire the lawyer. I was going to get everything behind me. I passed my licensure on the first try because that was my intention all along. I was meant to be in this field because I had that lived experience, and I didn't want any impulsive action to take that from me. And so I will say, yeah, I think it was a eye-opening moment as to like, this can all be taken in an instant.
Okay. I may come back to that. I'm trying to formulate another question around that, but I want to ask you a question. So from my understanding, your requirement for therapy has been reduced to once a month?
Yes, so it was weekly, and then my probation officer, Sabrina, said that like she laid out what I qualified to do. So then I was able to drop down the therapy to once a month. And then I was able to modify, but I couldn't petition to completely be off.
Right. And so the modification to once a month is pretty recent. That was December-ish? Okay, so have you only gone once in January and once in February, or what's your?
Yeah, I
pattern?
just talked to my therapist yesterday about this. We were preparing for today.
Okay, because you have been describing a thing that you would be doing 3 times a week to continue your processing, once in therapy and 2 with your support person, and that just felt like a lot at this point.
Mhm.
But ultimately, right now, if we reduce the substance program, you would only be getting support once a month, required support once a month from your therapist.
That's the key word there, because again, I reach out to her anytime that something were to occur. So yesterday being one of the days that I was like, hey, the thing's tomorrow. Can we talk? Do you have a cancellation kind of situation?
Okay. Because that is a pretty dramatic shift of support from what we're describing as 3 times a week I'm in this to now the potential is only once a month would you be getting required support. So that is a big shift.
I just think in my eyes, again, this was an isolated incident. I would 100% see the expectation to continue if I sat here and said I'm a substance abuse user and I'm struggling staying sober, but that is absolutely not the case.
Okay. So a little shift of questioning now, moving towards the dependency support groups
Mhm.
and your option to go one-on-one. So you've talked about like witnessing groups before and kind of questioning their efficacy, watching people kind of slide by. That's how I've been hearing it. Is that?
Yes, but in the sense of like, I wanted to get to the bottom of this and like, I wanted that spotlight on me. I wanted the whole hour to be about me and this issue, to have to relive it, to understand why I did what I did versus sharing, I guess, with other individuals, the spotlight, if that makes sense.
Okay. And that sentence makes me kind of expand this question a little bit. You're from, you're Turlock?
Turlock, yeah.
Okay. So Turlock is a relatively small town population. Is there any concern about you as a therapist being seen in a dependency support group in your community?
There was, because I work for Stanislaus County, so going to theirs, but that's why I chose a nonprofit in Turlock specifically, because I didn't want to be with other clients and that would just, that would be an issue.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And then finally, and I want to ask you this question and actually request that you not look down at your notes for this.
Okay.
Just take a breath. It's a real simple question. It goes back to what have you learned from your therapy and your dependency support groups along the way that has been your growth?
The impulsive decision-making, the peer pressure. Sorry, let me start over. So the impulsive decision-making, thinking things through to the end that you affect the public, your family, others. It's a ripple effect. Boundaries, peer pressure. I've worked through anxiety management. I've worked through grief, like I stated. I've worked on honoring my voice. And that's maybe one I haven't mentioned yet. When I feel that a situation isn't for me, I should honor that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
All right, Ms. Uribe, any questions?
Okay, yeah, I have a couple. So you mentioned that you had worked through anxiety management. How do you feel like that played a part in the decision you made?
It was more something that occurred after, like accepting the fallout of my actions. And I was constantly ruminating and stewing in thoughts. I had all these thoughts all of a sudden. And like I said, kind of more trauma response. They were extreme thinking versus, okay, well, there is a gray area. I don't have to go 1 to 100, right? So one of the things my therapist mentioned is she read my letter from the BBS and it says you can reapply in a year, right? And that was before I had made the plea deal. So I originally thought like all my schooling's gone. Everything I fought for is gone. So it was more dealing with that and anxiety and really sitting there and going, is that really what this says? Or is that the trauma speaking?
So like catastrophizing, right?
Yes, catastrophizing.
Okay. You'd mentioned, let me see if I understood correctly. You mentioned something about your current therapist and the substance abuse therapist. Did you say that your current therapist has a substance abuse specialty? Is that what you said?
No, I think that she's capable of doing what the other one does because what I was stating is unfortunately, Christy, that's the substance abuse lady. She doesn't have any degree. She's certified as a drug and alcohol counselor through I think it's CCAP or something along those lines. But I think Suzanne, my actual therapist, would be able to really do more of that deep dive. And often she does. I tend to just kind of blend it.
Okay. Last question is, do you think you could benefit from group therapy for substance abuse?
Well, essentially with the DUI class, that's kind of what that was. It was psychoeducation plus the group therapy. Like I said, I did participate. Often I mentioned or tried to guide some of the things that were being said. Do I think I would benefit at this point? No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Dr. Walker, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Just one question. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Sanchez. I think that you clearly articulated your remorse today repeatedly and saying that you would never do it again. You said that on numerous occasions throughout your sharing with us today, so I appreciate that. I think you've also clearly expressed how the rehabilitation efforts during your probation have benefited you to learn more about yourself and the safety or non-safety actions to the public and consumers. So I just wanted to give you another opportunity to further add or share anything more for why you believe you're not risk or putting the public or consumers at risk or of safety.
So I truly believe things happen for a reason. Okay. My son's father's circumstance over the murder had to do with substance abuse. So I'm done. I'm never touching anything again. My kid deserves to have one parent.
All right, just checking back to see if any of the board members have thought of any additional questions or new questions for those who did not ask any questions the first time around. All right, seeing none, Ms. Crawford, do you wish to make a closing?
No, Your Honor.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Sanchez, I forgot to step. Thank you for your testimony. You're excused as a witness. Ms. Crawford, you mentioned you have no closing. So Ms. Sanchez, do you wish to give a closing argument?
No, I just thank you guys for hearing the circumstance.
All right, well, thank you very much for your testimony and for your time and attention today. This concludes the hearing. The record's closed, the matter's submitted, and we are off the record. And just a reminder, if you have a seat while the court reporter prepares the form for you in case you want a copy of today's transcript.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. And I'll turn the matter back to you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Judge. All right, and with that, we will break for lunch. My glasses on so I can see what time it is. 11:30. All right, let's be back for 12:30. Oh, nope. I apologize. Supplemental. Yep, we have it. Thank you.
All right, very good. So let's go ahead and go on the record. And Mr. Court Reporter, if you'd like to make your statement.
My name is James Peters and my license number is 10,063.
Right, we're on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation by Jennifer Ann Mitchell. It's agency case number 2002-022-001758, OAH number 2025-010-530. My name is Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I have been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. Chairperson?
Here.
Madam Vice Chairperson?
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I am present physically. I'll work on emotion. I'll work on mentally then.
Dr. Boyd?
Present, thank you.
Ms. Friedman?
Present.
Mr. Huft?
Here.
Ms. Ortega?
Present.
Mr. Ranasingi? Mr. Sovic?
Present.
Ms. Uribe?
Present.
And Dr. Walker?
Present.
Thank you. We'll let the record reflect that a quorum is present. And next, if I may take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General, please.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General's Office pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. And let the record reflect that Ms. Mitchell is also present. Ms. Mitchell, as you may have heard before one or both of the other matters, Just from a procedural standpoint, after I go over the procedural outline for you, Ms. Crawford will introduce the petition and supporting documents and then provide a summary of your license history. And then after she does that, we'll turn the matter to you to present evidence in support of your petition. And we did confirm that the board received your additional documentation, so we have that. Were there any witnesses you wanted to call other than yourself?
Yes, my wife is here today. My wife is here today, was going to make a statement.
And to your right.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry about
Yes, my wife is here today, would like to make a statement.
Okay, so we could have her, testify, and then you could also testify, and the order is up to you whether you want to testify first or have her testify first. It doesn't matter. And then after each person testifies, then Ms. Crawford will have a chance to ask questions, and then the person will have a chance to provide any additional testimony they wish. Ms. Crawford will have a chance to ask additional questions, if any. And then once both parties have said all they wanted to say or ask all they wanted to ask, I'll check with the board to see if there are any questions. And then once the board finishes asking any questions it has, then the witness will be excused, and then we'll move on to the second witness. After both witnesses have testified, then I'll have the parties each provide a summary closing argument if they wish, and then the matter will be submitted for decision, and the board will deliberate later today in closed session. So a decision will not be issued today, but rather will be issued later, and you'll receive a copy in the mail. Just a reminder that the prior discipline has already been decided, and so there's no need to relitigate it. You'll hear Ms. Crawford in her summary talk a little bit about it just to provide context. In your testimony or your witness's testimony, either of you are welcome to provide some background or context regarding the discipline if it helps explain subsequent acts of rehabilitation. But keep in mind that what the board is most interested in hearing about today is any rehabilitation you've undergone since the discipline. Okay, and then last, after the hearing, the court reporter will have a form for you. So if you just have a seat in the audience for a few moments while he prepares that form, that's just in case you want a copy of today's transcript. The form will tell you or contain the information you need to go about ordering the transcript. And then once you get that, you're free to leave. Do you have any questions?
Not yet, no. thank
Okay.
you.
If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. All right, Ms. Crawford, your summary statement or documents, whichever you prefer to do first.
Thank you. The petitioner was issued her licensed clinical social worker license on March 30th of 2017. The license has been in full force and effect and will expire February 28th of 2025. I assume that's been renewed at this point. An accusation was filed on December 29th of 2020, charging the petitioner with having been convicted of a DUI in January of 2020. She was driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.35%. She was ordered to 5 years criminal probation, to attend a 9-month first conviction program, complete a 40 hours of volunteer work, and pay fines and fees. The circumstances leading to the petitioner's conviction were that officers were called to respond to a vehicle stuck on railroad tracks. When officers responded, petitioner appeared visibly intoxicated and unable to safely care for herself. On June 24th of 2021, a stipulated settlement became effective, placing petitioner on probation for 5 years and ordered to participate in a psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, substance abuse education, abstain from substances, submit to testing, and participate in a dependency support program. On April 22nd of 2022, a petition to revoke probation was filed, from which a stipulated settlement was reached and became effective August 25th of 2022. That extended petitioner's probation for an additional 2 years. The petition was filed due to the petitioner testing positive for alcohol on December 14th and December 23rd of 2021. She had also failed to call in or submit for testing on several occasions, resulting in the board issuing a cease practice order on January 10th of 2022. Petitioner's probation is set to terminate June 23rd, 2028. She's requesting early termination of probation and is compliant in all aspects of her probation since her petition to revoke. Petitioner has not yet completed her original 5-year term of probation and has over 3 years remaining on her probationary period. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce our evidence.
Please.
Did you get access to Case Center?
I did.
Okay. Exhibit 1 is the memo to the board from probation analyst Amanda Cantrell, indicating the license history, disciplinary history, and compliance with probation. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 1.
All right, the December 31st, 2024 memorandum to the board is marked as Exhibit 1. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No.
1 is so admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 2.
Right, the document is so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 2 for all purposes?
No.
2 is so admitted.
Exhibit 3 is the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. We'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 3.
The document is so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 3 for all purposes?
No.
3 is so admitted.
Exhibit 4. So I kind of marked these a little bit different. I did 4A and 4B. 4A is the petition for reinstatement and modification of early termination of probation form, along with attachments. I believe there's 12 pages total. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 4A.
Okay, so what I was going to do is, since they were separate, okay, we could do that as do 4A and 4B.
Yeah.
So the documents are so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 4A for all purposes?
No.
4A is so admitted.
And 4B is also attachments to the petition. These contain professional and personal reference letters. We'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 4B.
The character reference letters are marked collectively as 4B. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 4B for all purposes?
No.
4B is so admitted.
Exhibit 5 looks like it actually starts at the end of Exhibit 4. At the end of Exhibit 4B, the first page says release of information. And the second page, which starts on Exhibit 5, indicates psychotherapy information sheet. The actual content is contained in Exhibit 5 that is currently marked. It is the psychotherapy report from the petitioner's therapist, who we would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 5.
All right, the psychotherapy information sheet and other documents are marked collectively as Exhibit 5 for identification. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 5 for all purposes?
No.
5 is so admitted.
Exhibit 6A is the stipulated settlement and underlying documents. We'd like to mark and introduce this, and the underlying documents are nope, just stipulated settlement. That would be Exhibit 6A.
All right, so the stipulated settlement is marked as 6A.
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 6A for all purposes?
No.
6A is so admitted.
Exhibit 6B is the petition to revoke probation.
The petition is so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 6B for all purposes?
No.
6B is so admitted.
6C is the stipulated settlement from the accusation that was filed. I'd like to mark and introduce that.
Great. The document so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 6C for all purposes? 6C is so admitted.
And 6D is the original underlying accusation bringing this case forward. We'd like to mark and introduce that.
Great. The document so marked. Ms. Mitchell, any objection to 6D for all purposes?
No.
And 6D is so admitted.
And I have no other exhibits to introduce, Your Honor.
All right. So Ms. Mitchell, now's your opportunity to present your evidence. Let's first go over your exhibits if we can. Get to that part. So first we have a document entitled Meditations. We'll go ahead and mark that as Exhibit A. Ms. Crawford, any objection to Exhibit A for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
A is so admitted. Exhibit B is a mindfulness course completion. Any objection to B for all purposes?
No.
B is so admitted. Then C is a citizenship email. Any objection to C for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
C is so admitted. Exhibit D is Mitchell Interventions and Theories Utilized in Healing. Any objection to D for all purposes?
No.
D is so admitted. And then Exhibit E is positive highlights. Any objection to E for all purposes?
No.
E is so admitted. Exhibit F is negative impact of probation. Any objection to F for all purposes?
No.
F is so admitted. And then G is Nikki, Nikki, Kalavitis, K-A-L-A, V as in Victor, I, T as in Tom, I, S as in Sam, letter to the board. Any objection to G for all purposes?
No.
All right, G is so admitted. And Ms. Mitchell, those are all the exhibits I see in Case Center. Did I cover all the exhibits you submitted?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Do you wish to testify at this time, or would you like to have your wife testify first?
I'll go first.
Okay, so if
Spend
you
some
would,
time.
if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And if you would start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Jennifer, 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 last name Mitchell, Mitchell.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Mitchell, as I mentioned before, just a reminder that what the board is most interested in hearing about is any rehabilitation you have undergone since the prior license discipline. So whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote mine down, so I'm going to read it just because I didn't want to leave anything out as I spoke, because I think there's a lot of important things I want the board to hear. So
Sure.
bear
Just
with me as
one
I
thing,
read it.
one thing I'd ask that you keep in mind is that when we read things, we often talk faster than we normally do. But keep in mind that the court reporter is taking down your testimony, and of course, the board members want to hear your testimony. So if you try to keep the speed of your testimony on the slower side, that would be much appreciated.
Of course.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. And first, I do want to start by saying thank you for everyone for being here, because I know there's probably many other pressing places you could be at this moment. So I do truly appreciate you choosing to be here today to give me the space to share my journey and my growth. And as nervous as I am to be here and share this, I was actually excited when I heard the words burden of proof is on me, because it is on me. It's not on my wife. It's not on my boss. It's on the letters that I sent. It's not on Amanda. Thank you for your help today. But so it really made me sit down and reflect and kind of think like, what does that mean? How do I show and explain this internal growth? Because it is invisible. And sure, I can provide all the external evidence, the drug tests, the letters, from families and friends and sponsors, which I have and I deeply value. But how do I convey this invisible mental, emotional shift? Of course. Because in theory, I could go to all the therapy sessions in the world, all the AA meetings in the world, and say all the right things, but still truly not change inside. And it's the internal shift I feel that matters the most. And that is the challenge that I'm here to tackle today. So I'm going to do my best to share that with you while expressing my deep regret for my actions, the gratitude for this process, although honestly, it wasn't always gratitude for this process, but I have, and the profound changes that I have made. So the first part leading up to my DUI, and I will kind of revert back to the very first offense to kind of explain the progress I've made. So just in general, in my social life, alcohol has always been normalized, really since college days. My circle of friends, all successful professionals, regularly drank dinners, parties, concerts, sporting events, or even just a random weeknight in excess. It was common to joke about hangovers or laugh off stories of drinking too much and not even remembering things. In that environment, drinking didn't seem so excessive. It felt normal. Looking back now, I realized that I had surrounded myself with people who, like me, excuse me, were using alcohol as a coping mechanism. And it allowed me to justify my own drinking levels with minimizations, excuses, or justifications like I'm not that bad or that bad. January 14th, 2020, over 5 years ago, was both the worst and paradoxically the best day of my life because it set me on this path of self-discovery and growth. I had no idea at the time that experiences in childhood and workplace exposures would end up contributing to the intense stress and seemingly ineffective coping skills I was using, even though they had worked for so long. In 2019, I was at a breaking point. Nikki, my wife, and I had moved to California from the East Coast in 2016. I figured the next step for me professionally after 8 years of direct care was to become a manager. 2 years into the role of manager, I was overwhelmed, juggling 2 demanding positions. I had been hired as a program manager for a wraparound program, but they heard I had experience in group homes, so they were like, well, hey, why don't you also be the clinical manager for the group home and the school over here? So I was working across 2 separate programs, county, DD, and wraparound programs, all their requirements, paperwork. It quickly became unmanageable. I had also inherited a disgruntled team of 8 people whose roles had been merged. They were clinicians and case managers. They made them both. Their boss at the time didn't like that, so they quit, and here I come inheriting that. So it made it a lot more difficult. So with no clear guidance and the mounting stress, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I had reached my breaking point. You know, before that, the 2 clinicians on the clinical side with the DD in school had quit because of the paperwork. They were crying in my office literally monthly. They both quit. So I had to step in doing work for all the school, all the kids at the group home, doing clinical work in Cerner. I had no idea what I was doing. So needless to say, the stress was a lot. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. And with my wife's support, you know, she encouraged me to put my 2 weeks in. So I did end up quitting. During this 2-year time, my wife and I were also navigating a grueling 2-year IVF journey, which was draining us emotionally and financially. We were tens of thousands of dollars in debt in this process. And to make matters worse, the beginning of January, even before COVID, my wife worked for a small startup and got a phone call that she was facing an imminent furlough. So we're in debt. I wasn't working. I'd quit my job. Nikki was about to lose her job. And on January 14th, the day of the DUI, we received a call from our doctor that said that our last round of IVF had failed. So in a haze of grief and poor judgment, I made the inexcusable decision to drink heavily and drive. It was reckless, it was selfish, and that could have resulted in a devastating, irreversible consequence that is not lost on me. I am beyond grateful that no one was hurt, but that does not absolve me of the gravity of my actions. I failed in my responsibility to others, to myself, and I carry the weight of that decision daily. The shame of knowing what could have happened is something I will never take lightly. The deep regret and the harm I caused, not just to my wife, but to the trust placed in me as a professional, is not lost on me. Before the failed alcohol test in December of 2021 and the subsequent suspension, this would have been my full story. And I would have pointed to all the things that I've done: therapy, AA meetings. I was on antidepressants. I was seeing a psychiatrist. I was in compliance of all the stipulated requirements. I was sober for 1.5 years at this point. I was gainfully employed. I was respected in my job. And then December in 2021 happened. I call this the pivotal moment in my deeper work. In December of 2021, the violation, excuse me, was a true turning point. Again, I had been sober for over 1.5 years when a close college friend visited for a conference. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 20 years. We met for dinner with her colleagues, and immediately old insecurities resurfaced. It was like I was 18 years old again. She had always been someone I admired and felt intimidated by. At dinner, I was afraid to admit I didn't drink, and I thought I'll just take small sips so they won't notice. The thing I once admired about her, her outspoken and uncaring nature, now felt like peer pressure, and I succumbed. I take responsibility for that, but we ended up binge drinking just like old times. The subsequent failed drug test and a follow-up test weeks later, which confirmed that one night of binge drinking, was devastating. I lost my job, I lost my reputation, but most painfully in that process, I let down the clients who had depended on me for support, and their therapy and care was disrupted literally the next day. I got a phone call. I had to cease practice. I had to contact all my clients and explain. I felt deep shame about the whole thing. I ended up having to get a job as a server in a restaurant because without a license, I was not hireable at the profession I had loved for the last 14 years. But from this shame was also a beautiful transformation because it became the catalyst for deeper self-exploration. AA has a saying, alcohol isn't the problem, it's the solution. This violation it didn't force me actually. It gave me the opportunity to confront the real issue. Simply going through the motions on surface levels wasn't enough. The underlying beliefs and the subconscious patterns that I hadn't addressed were the real problem. And honestly, up until that point, I didn't know I needed to address them, which is why today I am so grateful for that moment, to be honest, and for the suspension. It gave me this time to work. It gave me this time to think. This was actually the start of my profound therapeutic work. And here's where I honestly want to say to the board that anything that follows this is by no way meant to be an excuse for my behavior, the information that I'm going to give you. I take full responsibility for my choices. This explanation is really just to give you context to what contributed to happen that day, those 2 times, and a way for me to conceptualize, again, not just the pieces of paper, but to conceptualize the deep transformation that I feel on the journey that I have been on. So for 17 years, I have dedicated my career to social work. I became an LSW in New Jersey in 2008. I achieved my LCSW in New Jersey in 2012. I pride myself in living by the NASW Code of Ethics and helping those in need, prioritizing service over self-interest, and advocating for vulnerable populations. I love the work that I did and the work that I do. But I didn't recognize how deeply prolonged exposure to trauma was affecting me until these moments. I set on this path I set on the social work path after undergrad when I received a fine arts degree, and I would tell everyone graduated with fine arts. And they'd be like, finance, that's great. I said, no, fine arts. And they're like, what are you going to do with that? Which was a fair question. Because after a while, I realized that I didn't know what I was going to do with that. I started looking into it and I decided that art therapy, because I love working with people and I loved art, was something that I wanted to look into. One of the schools I was applying for actually required work with a specialized population. So I looked around and that meant group homes. I didn't know what that meant, but there was a job opening for a caretaker at a group home. So I got hired I applied for a caretaker and I got hired as a house manager simply because I had a college degree. No one else in that house had a college degree. I had no idea what I was getting into, literally and figuratively. I was quickly exposed to intense trauma, kids throwing furniture, physical assaults, threats, destruction, police calls, restraints, heartbreaking cries for help. And I knew immediately the moment that I wanted to go back to grad school for social work and not art therapy was when a 6-year-old with a broken arm from his wrist to his shoulder after his father with a cast on after his father assaulting him. He had a bad day. I don't remember what happened, but he wrapped blinds cords around his neck and was screaming and crying that he wanted to kill himself. And he jumped off the top bunk bed of his room. Thankfully, he was okay. But this had a profound effect on me. The 6-year-olds that I knew at the time were coloring, learning to read, and playing with their friends. I worked at that place for a year and a half, applying for grad schools until I got accepted on the East Coast and moved home. The lack of supervision and the debriefing after the incidents at that job was glaring. I didn't realize till later. And I unknowingly began to normalize the chaos. Determined to do more, I pursued my graduate degree while working 2 years in a teens group home, which was actually very well run. But after graduating, I helped open one of New Jersey's first specialty group homes. At the time, New Jersey was trying to deinstitutionalize kids, get them out of all the lockdown facilities and large campuses. So they were opening these new homes that were regular homes in the community. Kids would go to regular schools, but it was one step below an inpatient psychiatric care, which was designed for youth with the most severe behaviors. Criteria for the homes were fire setting behaviors, sexual offending behaviors, and sexual behavior problems, as well as severe complex trauma with acting out behaviors that could not be maintained in the home. It was also a no eject, no reject home, meaning that we had no control over who was placed there, and we could not remove them without state approval. The first year we operated, we were a no restraint policy, meaning no hands-on. Leading to constant crisis, property destruction, daily police calls who ended up not liking us very much, violent outbursts, physical fights, elopements, and constant staff turnover. My office was located inside the home, meaning that I was immersed in this environment daily. Over my 8 years there, I encountered levels of trauma and emotional dysregulation that are hard to describe to someone who has never worked with trauma or been in a group home environment. The emotional and psychological toll was immense, but I was able to normalize it. It was work. It was for the kids. They were the traumatized ones. During my 8 years there, some examples of the intensity included I was assaulted multiple times. I had to de-escalate violent incidents regularly and almost daily. I was sexually groped on several occasions. At one time, I was locked in my office and threatened and groped for over 20 minutes before someone came to that wing of the house. My car was vandalized. My personal belongings were destroyed. I had to do restraints in emergency situations. I got a concussion one night after a 200-pound 17-year-old decided to punch me in the head because he wanted more French fries with his dinner, and I happened to be walking by. As the boys' clinician, I also wore witness to unimaginable trauma histories and narratives, including severe physical and sexual abuse. I was there for 8 years. I heard a lot of stories. The most difficult part of all this was that there was minimal supervision and little to no debriefing after critical incidents. The 8 years I worked there, I had 3 different supervisors, none of whom lasted more than a year and a half. So you can do the math. Their office was also 40 minutes away. For long stretches, I had no direct oversight. I thought I was handling it well the entire time. I was repeatedly praised for being so calm in crisis situations. Later, realizing that this was my strength as a fawner in threatening situations, and my long history of emotional deflection and suppression was coming in handy. In all, over those years, I honestly thought I was doing great. I was doing my self-care. I was running multiple times a week. I was painting, spending time with friends and family, traveling, reading books, going to the beach, my happy place. I didn't realize how deeply the vicarious trauma had embedded itself. And I didn't realize till much later that what I was, when I was doing this work, that there is a distinct difference between distracting myself with self-care, such as running, and taking the time to check in with myself with CBT to access those thoughts and feelings, and then intentionally with purpose go for a run. And with the awareness, track the shift in the thoughts and behaviors that that action provides on purpose with awareness and intent was my new mantra. I normalized the chaos, and it wasn't until much later in my personal therapeutic work that I realized the profound impact this period had on my nervous system and my emotional well-being. I had been compartmentalizing the trauma I absorbed daily, convincing myself that I was unaffected. And then I go kind of a little bit deeper with the work, and I wanted to share with you guys too. I know this is a lot, but I think it's important to show this transformation. As far as family identity suppression and my core beliefs, again, through therapy and my own self-work, I began to untangle the ways that my upbringing shaped my ability or inability to process emotions, to be vulnerable, or to embrace my authentic self. My father was raised in an emotionally distant Irish Catholic household with 6 siblings. The youngest brother had Down syndrome, and his mother died when he was 17. He rarely spoke about emotions or his own trauma. His grief was buried, and as a result, he was largely absent, both physically due to work living in Florida during my high school career and emotionally due to his own detachment. My mother had her own struggles. Her father, who grew up in an orphanage, was later a World War II veteran, D-Day +4. He returned home with severe PTSD. Her mother was a career-driven businesswoman and was often absent. The emotional connection wasn't something either of my parents had been given, so it wasn't something they really knew how to provide. I love my parents dearly, but you can't give what you don't have. In our home, talk of feelings or vulnerability was non-existent. My sisters and I learned to suppress feelings using humor or creative outlets to deflect. I internalized the core belief that my thoughts or emotions did not matter. There was no space for sadness, insecurity, or self-exploration. If I struggled, I didn't talk about it. I minimized, I distracted, and I moved on. I received external praise for performance in school or on the soccer field, and I focused on those behaviors. This deeply affected how I processed my identity. Growing up in a conservative religious household, same-sex attraction wasn't just unspoken, it was something to be avoided entirely. If it was spoken about, it wasn't kindly. There were no role models, no conversations, no framework to understand or accept those things or feelings. I absorbed the messaging that being gay was shameful, incompatible with my family's values, and something that would never be accepted. Without the tools to process my emotions, I did what I had been conditioned to do. I suppressed them. I ignored it and avoided it and compartmentalized it, convincing myself that if I didn't acknowledge it, it wasn't there. This internalized shame led to self-doubt, isolation, and an overwhelming sense of not being enough, another core belief that was unearthed. I believed that who I was at my core was something to hide. This emotional suppression carried into adulthood, influencing my relationships, my coping mechanisms, including excess drinking, and my ability to be more fully present in my own life. Through this psychoanalytic work, I began to understand that these patterns, defense mechanisms, helped me recognize how repression shaped my behaviors. Jung's concept of the shadow self explained how I rejected the parts of myself that I struggled to accept. More than anything, I saw how alcohol had become a tool, not only for pleasure, but for escape and for connection to fit in. It was a way to silence the feelings that I have spent my entire life trying to suppress. The work I've done has allowed me to finally unpack, process, and accept those emotions I was once afraid of. I no longer suppress who I am. I no longer silence myself. And I now understand that authenticity and vulnerability are not weaknesses. They are honestly the key to true self-acceptance and healing. This journey has been one of profound transformation, and I sit before you today as the most self-aware, fulfilled, and emotionally grounded version of myself. The work that I have done has not only changed me, but it has deepened my relationships and strengthened my ability to show up for others, not just personally, but professionally also as a therapist. Through cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic work, the grief and loss perspective and exploration to understand the stages I was in, mindfulness, meditation, and gratitude practices, I have learned to process emotions rather than suppress them. I now approach life with intention and self-awareness using the tools I teach my clients daily. My marriage has grown stronger. My wife and I communicate more openly. My friendships and family relationships have improved, and I am more present and engaged in all aspects of my life. This journey has been like riding a bike. At first, it was a little unsteady, full of missteps, falls, and uncertainty. But once I found my balance, I experienced a freedom I never knew I was missing. I can't believe that I did not learn to ride this bike sooner, but I'm grateful that I finally did. And just like riding a bike, these skills, this way of being, are now a permanent part of who I am. I know that this early termination of probation is a serious decision, and I don't take this process lightly. But I hope to have conveyed today is not just compliance, but true internal change. I am not the person that I was when this began. I'm a better therapist. I'm a better wife, a better friend, a better person because of this journey. I want to express my sincere gratitude for this process, honestly, for the lessons that I have learned and for the opportunity to stand before you today. I thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for allowing me to share the depth of the work that I have done. Thank you.
All right, is there any further testimony you wanted to provide at this time?
No, that's it.
All right, Ms. Crawford, cross-examination.
Thank you. Can you explain a little bit about the significance of these exhibits that you've introduced? So the first one is titled Meditations.
Yes. I began the practice of meditation several years ago as a way to find that grounding, find that inner self, find that meaning. And I just I put that on there as example. That's only the last year, I think, from 2024, but just as an example that I really do integrate this as a daily practice for grounding and self-awareness techniques.
Okay. And I think I read in your statement that this is something you do through an app.
That is one of the apps I use. I also use Insight Timer. I also just meditate on my own with self-guided meditations. I've done it enough now to do both, but I really do like that app.
Okay. And you've also completed an Exhibit 2, a mindfulness course.
Yes, that is through Positive Psychology. It's a mindfulness course. It was an 8-week course for the practitioner, and I also completed an 8-week course for a trainer. So it's not a certification course, but I am able to train people in mindfulness also, which is something I also practice daily.
If you turn the kids that way, they can't hear you because you're not using the microphone.
Okay.
And do you incorporate this into your practice with patients?
I do. Okay. Yes.
And explain what the citizenship email is in Exhibit 3.
Yeah, I just put that in there for, for deliberation cases later. I know my wife is going to speak, and I didn't touch on it, but it's also one of the exhibits of the way, why I'm seeking termination too, is not because I feel like I've completed and I'm a very, I was going to say wonderful version of myself, but I guess that is true. But we also have plans to move out of the country. So I'm hoping the termination, that piece, I don't want to reflect on it being like, this is how it's affecting my life. So this is why I'm getting termination. I think that's an aside and just kind of sharing how it does impact us negatively. We're planning, my wife works for a foreign company in England. So we're actually hoping to move over to Greece soon. That is the information for her citizenship. She's part Greek, so it
Okay.
should be coming in shortly. So as soon as we have the citizenship, we're able to move.
I see.
They struggling, I'm sorry to watch.
I'm so close. I feel like I'm
They're struggling and they.
okay.
Sorry about that.
I'll speak up.
Exhibit 4 says I've been going by numbers. I believe these are letters. So Exhibit 4 would be Exhibit D. It's your interventions and theories utilized in your healing journey. Explain what you'd like the board members to take from this.
Sure. I think as I had mentioned in the beginning, easily, the external thing, I'm looking at things as external versus internal. And the external things, I think like the letters from from work and from people, I think of the external piece. I really kind of wanted to just highlight the internal shift. And those are some of the theories that I've used, some of the examples of the things that I do to kind of represent the internal shift that really is invisible piece to see. Things I've talked about in my statement, but, a more clear, concise version there.
Okay. And Exhibit E, your positive highlights. What is this document?
Yeah, I think just things that I didn't put in my statement. I honestly don't have it up in front of me, but I know some of them were, as I talked about working at that job, that was kind of my last straw with my nervous system and having to quit. Externally, I don't think anybody knew it was happening because I did win a managerial award that year, nominated by my peers and my colleagues. So, and to highlight too, in those moments, it wasn't that my work was suffering. I don't think anybody knew. Again, I won the award, but I knew that I was not, if I had stayed there in the state I was in, not eating, not drinking, being so stressed out, my work would have suffered. So, and I made the conscious effort to, not compromise anybody, compromise the people I was supervising, compromise the clients, compromise the agency. So I just wanted to highlight that I did step out of that before things did affect my work.
Okay. Exhibit F, those are the negative impacts of probation. And you were attempting to explain to the board some of the reasons how probation has been somewhat difficult on you.
Yes. And again, I apologize. I don't have it in front of me. I know one of the biggest ones has been financially, just because there was that 8-month, excuse me, the 8-month gap where I wasn't able to work under the profession. My wife currently is working contractually also, so we don't have insurance, so we're paying insurance out of pocket. So there is a financial burden of the drug testing and the settlement as well that's impacting us. And I'm blanking on what else is on there.
You did mention the financial impact of drug testing, denial from most insurance companies, inability to secure malpractice insurance, disruption of future plans and relocation you spoke about, the anxiety and stress over check-ins, making sure you're not missing any tests. And then your client's treatment is impacted by your financial constraints.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm smiling now because I was talking to Amanda. I actually forgot to bring my tests with me on this journey from San Diego. So I took care of it. I called the company, but I'm like, out of all places, I forgot to bring it here. But there is the stress of, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and checking just to make sure, because when it was, we had to, screen online. It was an East Coast company. So by the time I woke up, most of the appointments were gone. But again, I don't mean to highlight. The highlight here is really on the growth that I've done. That's kind of, you can review that on the side. But, the thing that really is impactful, mostly for the clients too, the agency I work for, thank goodness. And another highlight on there is they did hire me back after my suspension. They said to me before, when I got suspended, they would hire me back. They really valued my work and as a clinician, as a person. And they stuck to that. And I'm very thankful for them that they did do that. They are paneled by 15 different insurance companies. Only 2 are willing to take the chance on me. Thankfully enough, I'm able to keep a caseload with those 2 insurance companies. But one of the places that I was trying to think how to say this without naming them, a hospital chain took a year to determine whether or not they would take me as a provider. So they were allowing me to see clients for a year and then dropped me when they noticed that there was probation. So those clients, after seeing for a year, were terminated, and that was on the insurance. But that was also, I feel guilty for that. I take responsibility for that because it was ultimately what happened to me that affected the clients. I hate to see that happen. When that happened, don't quote me, but I believe it was like close to half of my 12 clients stayed with me and paid cash because they felt that the value that they were getting and the service that they were getting was enough to pay cash for. when you're paying this certain fee for cash, it's a lot, burdensome for them. So a lot of them had to go down to twice a week or once a month instead of the weekly that we were seeing. So there is that, heavy burden on my clients, which I take responsibility for, that I do feel bad of, that they're, feeling the results of my actions. Also, because we're planning on moving one day, looking at options on how to start my own practice or even a coaching business, whatever that looks like. But looking into on the side of private practice now, I could not get covered by a malpractice insurance. They wouldn't cover me based on the probation. So I stopped pursuing that at the moment, but that was one of the things I also highlighted on there as well.
So if you were able to move, when would you move out of the country?
Great question. I think there's still, it looks like from that email we just received that her citizenship will come through quickly. Obviously, we're not going to pick up and move tomorrow. There's still a lot of things that we need to put in place, but I believe we are hoping by the end of the year at least.
So when was the last date that you drank alcohol?
It was that December 14th date 3 years ago.
And you said that the December 23rd positive test was still from the December 14th.
It was. It was a binge drink. It was like we were in college and we drank a lot, and it was still, I guess, blood tests are super sensitive. I don't know. But it was from that one incident.
Had you had an intervening test between the 14th and the 23rd?
I did not.
Okay. So those two tests were positive.
They were.
And you said it was a blood test?
The first was a urine test. The second one was a blood test.
Okay. I think you've really given us a flavor for the binge drinking, and really with a 0.35% alcohol level, there was probably a tolerance there for you.
Yeah.
It's been 3 years since close to 4 years since your last, 3.5 years since your last alcohol drink. With a very lengthy, solid history of drinking prior to that. Why do you feel that while you've made great strides, why do you feel that 3 years into your 5 to 6 year probation period is sufficient to show that you no longer need any kind of oversight?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was fortunate enough that when the initial DUI happened, that I won't say stopping drinking was easy, but from the stories I've heard through AA, for me, it was relatively easy. For me, it was more of like this, like really deep social connection, like this grief and loss when I couldn't go to a concert and have that, or go to a dinner party and have that. And so I think with that deep work, really like understanding that about myself. And I honestly, when I had finally let go of the drinking, I was 1.5 years sober before that December. So the DUI was 5 years ago. So I was already 1.5 years, again, like, but surface level, like I guess they call white knuckling it. And it was like not understanding literally like what the problem was. Alcohol was a solution. The problem was those deep inner work I'd done. Being so far removed from it, like honestly, like I honestly, this is why I like struggle so deeply to explain this deep, profound inner change, because everything I look at in the world now is not out here, it's in here. Everything that happens out here happens here first. I exist in this world through this inner feelings, these thoughts, these concepts, these values, these bias, and I look here first. So and when I experience the world now, when I go to places, I go to concerts, and I look almost with empathy on people who are in that position where they're drinking and getting wasted. And it's like, it's so far removed from me that it honestly doesn't hit the same way. Like I have full confidence that that is never going to happen again. I'm trying to share with you that same way, but it honestly is this paradigm change that I do not see it at all the same way.
And that paradigm change has to do with the work you've done to understand why you were drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, the actual stopping wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, but you'd be sitting there like watching people drink and being like, oh, it'd be nice to, that kind of thing. And it was more of this surface level, like wanting to connect or wanting to be like everyone else, or not having to be so self-conscious, or, just wanting to feel more relaxed. And I don't need that anymore. I don't need any of that. I'm very confident with who I am and how I present, and being able to create happiness from the inside out.
Why were there some missed call-ins and missed testing that you had prior to the petition to revoke?
Yeah, another great question. I have 3 alarms on my phone, and one is I set, I think, at like 5 a.m. or used to. So that one would go off and I'd try to check. There'd be a snooze. There's one at noon at lunchtime, and there was one, I think, at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And for some of those, it was really just either a snooze, or I'm driving in the car, or I'm not at work, or it goes off when I go, oh, and I didn't check in, and I literally just absentmindedly forgot. Since those 3 years, and Amanda says maybe she can, since that December, I don't think there's been any missed check-ins. And if there was a missed check-in, I immediately drove to the urgent care and had a test on that day. So there was no missed lapses at all since 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago.
So what's the change there where you stopped snoozing the alarms?
Honestly, probably taking, and I don't want to say taking it more seriously. I thought I was. I think the fear of actual losing my license, and that's where I say, like, the anxiety of having to get up and check is there. I think that was just doubled down, the anxiety doubled down on the actual consequences of what happens when you don't check in. I think also too, it was, and don't quote me, the way it was kind of described in the beginning was there, you can miss some of them and you're not going to lose your license, which I think is true. But so I don't, not that there wasn't urgency, but kind of like this, I'll check in later, or, I'll get it when when I finish my lunch, or when all that happened, I was absolutely never going to miss another check-in again.
Understood. And what is the rehab program that you participated in?
The rehab program I participated in?
Dependency support program.
The AA meetings?
Was it AA?
Yeah.
And how often did you do that?
In the beginning, but prior to even having probation, I started going, I went with a sponsor. I had done half of the steps, I think, before probation even started. I wasn't working, so the sponsor I was working with was like, you have to go 90 in 90 days. I did every single day for 90 days. I did another 30 and 30. I was very invested in the beginning because I wasn't working. I now go twice a week as required. I do online now.
Do you still have a sponsor?
I do not.
When did you graduate from a sponsor?
I'm going to say maybe a year and a half ago.
And why did you choose to move away from a sponsor?
Yeah, I've completed my 12 steps with her. I had 3 sponsors over the time. The first one lived 35 minutes away, so I transitioned to another. The other one already had like 7 sponsors, and she was like, I can't do it. So I had finished half of the steps with those 2. The third sponsor I worked with her, completed all the 12 steps. And really it was kind of like, I think it might have, I know it was before that, transitioning to more online. So I wasn't going to the same meetings she was going to anymore. It kind of naturally drifted. We were checking in via text. And then honestly, I kind of gravitated more towards CBT and more towards the more therapeutic work than I did the AA work. And I felt that was more helpful for me in those moments.
You were doing that with your individual counselor, the CBT work?
CBT work, yes. And I'm also a CBT therapist, so I was doing some of the self-work as well. But yes, with my therapist.
Are you still finding some benefit to going to AA counseling or to AA meetings?
I do. I I'm smiling because I do really enjoy one of them. And some of them I do go to that I don't put on the lists I send because they don't give the validations. But one of them is a music one. And there's a host and they play songs, 2 hosts, they play songs, and you look through the lyrics and they show how like they've been impacted in their life, what the words mean to them. I really like that one. I do enjoy the speaker meetings just because it's a really great reminder of where we come from and where we can be. The meetings that are just kind of like free flow speaking, I don't find as helpful. So I kind of pick the meetings that do have impact on me.
And how often are you seeing your counselor?
I see her monthly now,
Okay, but how often did you start with?
weekly.
And when did you start going to monthly?
I think it was last January.
Okay.
Don't quote me. As soon as I knew that I could ask for a lower amount,
Yeah.
then that was granted.
Okay.
I wasn't aware that that was an option.
Of the terms of probation that you have, if probation were terminated, what would you continue with
Yeah.
for your own, purposes of staying free from alcohol abuse?
Yes. Definitely continue therapy. AA, I don't think I would do twice a week. I would definitely pop in here and there. I do like those speaker meetings and I do enjoy the music ones. There is also a meditation one that I like to do. Everything on that list that you see as far as the therapeutic work, I do a lot of my own work just now because the structure is there. So now it's more of like a maintenance stage that I'm in, I feel like. So the structure is there. I live close to the beach. I go out several times a week and I work on my bias. I work on just observing, and I work on what comes up in my mind and my bias, and I switch them, I change them. I'm aware of my thoughts. I go out every morning. We literally live 77 steps to the beach. I take my coffee and I do my morning meditation and my gratitude journal. I check in with the gratitude because shifting from a place of either negativity or things I can't change into a place of gratitude, neurobiologically, you can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. It activates the reticular activating system in the back of our brain, which filters our environment and just looks for more positivity. So there's lots of things I do like that on a daily basis that really fine tune all the work that I've already done with my own therapist. The mindfulness just every day. I ground myself with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and not because I'm having anxiety, but because it brings me into this room where I'm at, not in my head, where reality happens. So I do a lot of things like that that I will consistently do because I find them so beneficial. I hope that answered your question.
It does.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Also think, like, I am also heavy CBT, but lots of other interventions I use in my own work. I do telehealth. I see up to 6 clients a day. So doing that work with them also very much reinforces the things that I'm doing myself. Like I'm constantly talking to them about these inner workings, the thoughts, the distortions. How are you feeling? What are you feeling? I'm popping up feelings, circles on the screen. So talking about it for 6 hours a day really, again, reinforces it for myself as well. So
And does your wife also abstain from alcohol?
she does not.
And how do you find that? Is it difficult for you at all?
No, it's actually not. She hasn't stopped drinking through this entire process. Again, I think I'm extremely lucky that it was easier for me in the beginning. And now I'm so far removed from it that I don't see it at all the same. So it doesn't bother me at all. There's wine in our house now.
And where do you currently work?
I work at Mood Health.
Mood Health?
Mhm.
And you said that they did terminate your employment during the suspension period, but once the suspension was lifted, you went back.
Yes.
What is your position there?
Clinician, therapist.
And how long have you worked there?
Since right after, I worked there for the 6 months prior to the suspension. I think I started in that June when I started probation, similar time. Left in that January when I lost my license, when it was suspended, and then started back in October of 2021
Okay.
when it was reinstated. So
With the exhibits and that you've introduced and kind of walked us through your daily life of how you ensure that you're staying mindful and taking care of yourself. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by what you need to do in order to ensure that you're taking good care of yourself?
no, absolutely not. I think it has just become a natural part of who I am. And, it seems like a lot when you list them out, like mindfulness, gratitude, that like those things, if I don't do them, it's not like I have to do these things. I
Mhm.
enjoy doing them. And it doesn't seem like work at all. In fact, gratitude journals, when I don't have the book in front of me, I do it in my head. It takes 30 seconds. Um, like the amount of CBT I talk about, like in my head, I'm like sitting here, I'm like, what are you thinking? Like I'm thinking all of, like the distortions that you could all possibly be thinking at me and reframing them in the moment, right? I'm labeling for myself like the feelings I'm having right now. I'm nervous, I'm a little bit stressed out, I feel it's super awkward, and I'm reframing those things, I'm giving my prefrontal cortex information about the feelings so it can, knows what to do with them. Like it's so ingrained and natural to me. Like none of this feels like work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Mitchell, is there anything else you wanted to testify to on your behalf?
I don't think so. No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'll check with the board for any questions. Mr. Chairperson?
Can you tell us about your relapse plan?
I don't have like a specific like written down plan. And again, I think because I feel so far removed from it, like emotionally, cognitively. I think my plan is just that, like to continue to doing what I'm doing. In the past 3 years since that relapse happened, I've been to weddings, I've been to concerts, I've been to Europe where I think they were in Hungary and Prague, where they were proclaiming on every visit that we went that they drink the most alcohol in the world. I was surrounded by it and not an inkling of even wanting to taste it. So I'm very confident in that. So I've been tested. So I think my plan is really to continue to what I'm doing with the therapy, with the CBT, with the mindfulness work, with the really kind of deep inner reflection. Then there's no need for that on the outside.
Thank you. No further questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Board Chair and Judge, when do we hear from the witness? I'm just concerned about the process.
I believe it would be after we're done.
I just wanted to be sure about the process of
Yes, so-
allowing the witness to speak.
So we'll finish questioning with one witness before we go to the next.
Okay,
So we don't have to bring them back for
Okay.
questioning. Thank you.
thank you.
Any further questions? All right, Madam Vice Chair? Stepped out. All right, Dr. Boyd?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. Thanks again for being here. So I heard you talk about a lot of, I think, really, really great things that you've done and the work that you've done, and I want to really acknowledge that. And I also know that hearing a little bit of your desire to want to be able to go to Greece, it sounds like that seems to be kind of the plan that you have now, which makes sense since you have your wife is going to be relocating there. You probably don't want to hang back here by yourself, so I totally understand that. But I do wonder. I know Chairman Jones asked kind of like about your relapse plan, and maybe you can speak a little bit more to what would your plans be in Greece. And I guess parallel to that is, do you plan to maintain your sobriety long term, or is this something that may come to a potential end but when you're no longer on probation?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I think that's why like my urgency to kind of really like explain this deep inner work is because I honestly don't, I do intend to remain sober because I don't have that same perception of what alcohol is. Like I am able to walk into any room and talk to anybody when I didn't used to be able to do that. I can get up and dance at a concert and not feel embarrassed. We went to the Dixie Chicks. I don't even know them and I was dancing around. So I don't have any need for that thing, whatever that may be, alcohol, drugs, whatever people use, right? For me to feel fulfilled. I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your full question. I think there was another part to that.
Yeah, no, I think you're getting there. I'm just trying to understand more of transitions are you know this as a therapist, transitions are big, right? And sometimes some of the most riskiest moments, particularly if you're trying to maintain sobriety, can be in points of transition. And I'm just trying to think, should you be granted termination? And should you make this transition at some point in the near future, where you, I'm assuming, may not have the same social supports around you, what is your plan effectively to maintain your sobriety if that is what you would like to do long term?
Yeah, yeah. And I think just continuing to do what I'm doing. And I'm smiling. I'm like, do I say this? Full disclosure, my wife keeps me in check as far as not like my behaviors, but like really checking on my well-being too. I mean, she drinks. We have alcohol in the house. I'm not tempted at all. But she's really kind of on top of me of making sure that I'm okay. She was the one who encouraged me to quit my job to begin with when I was feeling stressed and not feeling myself. She's like, it doesn't matter about the financial burden, and we'll also help support you. Full disclosure, and this isn't funny, but she left me in jail on purpose after the first DUI for 2 days, for 2 nights and 3 days, because she said I deserved it, which I absolutely did. So there's no way in this world that she is going to let me do anything that's detrimental to myself. She loves me very much and she supports me in any way. And I think, you'll hear from her, but the transformational change that I've had, it's funny, it's not funny either, but my therapist and I were talking and, reflecting on today and kind of discussing, like what do you think is important for them to hear, giving her some insights that I've already shared. And she goes, well, you should definitely talk to them about how your relationship with alcohol has changed. And I kind of like sat back and I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Because I sometimes forget, to be honest, that it all started with alcohol because I have been so far removed emotionally and from that idea of that as even a coping skill. So I do recognize that was where it started. It is not lost on me. But I think, for me, I'm very confident in the fact that there's no going back. There's no need. There's absolutely no need.
It sounds like you have a great partner, and that's very great that you have that support. And I guess the other maybe last question would be, cravings. I mean, I know you said you don't have those so much now, and that's not something that comes up for you, but I would have to imagine there's going to be moments where you do think about it, and even, I don't know if craving's the right word, but have maybe reminders of what it was like on maybe the better sides of things. And what is your comfortability of being able to continue to manage that kind of going forward?
Yeah, great question. And I think, I feel like I don't know if tested is the right word, right? Like, because I mean, there was that major test that happened after 1.5 years of sobriety, and I failed it deeply in December with a friend at dinner. And I think since then, really having done the inner work and those tests that have come around me, I've been tested. I think whatever has come up in life in the last 3 years, as far as friendships, those friends I was talking about, as far as, their excess drinking, I'm still friends with them. They still drink the same way that they do. When I see it at this point, it makes me a little bit sad. I empathize for them because I don't have any desire to be in that space or even go close to that space, to be honest.
And then my last question is, what would you do if you were to get off early termination and if you were to relocate? What are your plans professionally outside of the country? Do you plan to continue to practice remotely in California, or what would be your professional goals, I guess, from here on out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was hoping to start my own private practice just to gain some clients and then be able to see them still if I could, or even I didn't know if that was possible, even converting to a coaching business of some sort if licensure wasn't allowed. I do plan on working with people because it's what I love to do. In what capacity, I'm not sure if I move what that would look like, to be honest. If there is a way for me to continue to even use a license in California while I'm abroad, I haven't looked too deeply into that. Then that may be an option.
Okay, great. Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Friedman, any questions?
Thanks so much for being here and telling us your story. I have one quick question. You mentioned that you do teletherapy. Is that the sole kind of therapy that you practice?
Yes, at this moment I do. Yes, it's all online.
So you're not seeing your clients face to face?
I am not.
Does that make it difficult for you to explain to them, or because you have to tell them that you're on probation, right?
I do not. That was not one of the stipulations.
You do not tell them that you've been on probation?
No. My work knows, the clients do not.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Huft, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Who solicited the client testimonials?
Oh, for the exhibits, I solicited them from my clinical director.
You solicited them from the clinical director.
Sorry, let me back up. When clients either leave, when they first come, they give a survey after, I think, 30 days, and then 6 months, and then at termination. So they give kind of like a survey, and people will write comments on it. So she just compiled, I said, do you have any comments that are mine? And so she just compiled that list of comments from some of those surveys.
So this is just a routine part of their sort of exit.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So you have multiple letters of support. These are strong, compelling letters. 2 of them don't mention probation at all, Nora's letter and Betsy's letter. And I'm curious what your prompt was for them.
I said, I'm coming to request early termination from the board. Can you write me a letter?
Yeah, okay, great. You have a very comprehensive, detailed wellness plan, including mindfulness, meditation, CBT, grief and loss work, identity and shame, emotional suppression. Is there anything that you think that you have done that has contributed to your recovery that we have not heard yet?
I don't think so. Not that I can think off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you are specifically in clear, measurable outcomes, a better LCSW now compared to before, or to put differently, like if one of us was your client, how would we experience better therapy now than we would have a few years ago?
Yeah, great question. I think because you've heard my past experience, when I came out of grad school, I was, first job working with the group home kids. I was very heavy on CBT, and that was one of the theories that I really gravitated to in general. But I think the work that I did for the 8 years there was really more, the word's escaping me, more educational for the kids. I think when you're in crisis mode and when your nervous system is not calm, you can't be integrating higher concepts. So I think for myself, it was more psychoeducation was the word I was looking for. It was more psychoeducation. It was more crisis management. It was more teaching the skills to have the kids know that the skills were there, hoping that they would eventually use them. I think through my work now, understanding what the skills are and using them myself gives me a way better ability to be able to describe these skills in more specifics, to be able to share how I've used them, to be able to share the interventions I've used and the growth I've seen, and how that's, when you self-disclose, or not even just in general, how these things work. I think my own transformation has, I've sought more information about neurobiology and how the brain works, and, how spirituality and how neurobiology connect. And so the version of me you're going to get today is much more educated, much more internalized of actually using them, instead of just kind of giving this I keep forgetting that word, more educational piece of the concepts, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Did any term or condition of your probation impact the therapy or confidentiality of the records of your clients?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Did any term or condition of your probation affect the therapy or the confidentiality of client records?
No.
Okay, so to Board Member Friedman's point, stipulation 14 indicates you would not need to tell clients about being
Oh,
on
okay.
probation.
Yeah, no.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Ms. Ortega, any questions?
Hi. I'm curious about what your short-term or long-term goals are to maintain your focus and your motivation, because right, substance use is a lifelong journey. So just curious how and you're also seeing 6 clients a day, which is 30 a week. It is a lot. Um, Unfortunately, in our field, I know that that's not too off, but so just curious about, what your goals are.
Yeah, as far as maintaining sobriety.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think I've kind of hopefully spelled that out a little bit already. As far as the 6 clients, I actually was seeing 7, and on purpose, I realized that that was too much for me. I didn't want to give anyone poor care, and I realized by the 7th, I was kind of getting more tired. I cut it back to 6 because that's my sweet spot. I have 3, I have a hour lunch, and then I have 3. So I think for me, it's really manageable. I also have I work half days on Fridays because of that. So I only see average 20 clients, between 18 and 20 if they show up a week, really. But as far as the care, I think it is just, I feel like I've hit this kind of like apex, and not that there's not any farther to go. I'm not saying that at all, but I feel like I'm in this kind of maintenance phase as far as like the list you'll see there, all the things that I'm going to continue to do. I'm still going to do AA meetings, pop-ins on the ones that I really like, maybe not twice a week, but definitely, when I'm able and when I feel the need, when I feel the urge. And when I say urge, I don't mean cravings. I when it calls me, right, to pop in. And also, I continue therapy and doing all the things that I'm already doing on that list as well. I mean, I think those are the things. And again, not work as far as like having to do gratitude every day. Like it's just kind of like this, fruit salad of mix of things I choose from to maintain it. That as my short-term and long-term plan, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Sovek, any questions?
Thank you. Yes, I actually have a curiosity about a phrase you've been using both in your spoken testimony today, but also throughout your written testimony. And it's this phrase, ethical integrity. And I was wondering if you could expand on what that concept means to you and how it's developed through this probationary period and your kind of life growth that's been going on during this period.
Yeah. Did I use the word ethical integrity? I don't remember saying those exact words. I think I know what you mean by that, though. Sorry, can you repeat that?
So there's this phrase,
Yeah.
ethical integrity.
Yeah.
In your written submissions, it's used multiple times.
Okay. Yes.
And then also today, you've used this same little phrase quite often too.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand a little bit more what this term means to you
Yeah.
and how it may have developed during this probationary period and your journey through your substance use.
Gotcha. Yes. I think ethical integrity, I mean, as a social worker, and I do consider myself a social worker more first than a therapist, I had a difficult transition going from
Can you lean in a little bit?
group homes to telehealth because I was so ingrained in wanting to help the most vulnerable populations. So I take that ethical piece into all of the work I do. I was deeply shamed when I lost my clients during that suspension piece. The fact that their care was interrupted, that I was getting emails from them like, can I pay out of pocket? It was heartbreaking. Ethical integrity, meaning not just showing up for me, but also showing up for the work, showing up for the agency, showing up for the clients. And that does start with me. That starts with being I mean, as therapists, we are the tool, essentially. You know, if I show up half a tool, I'm not doing anyone any good. And I think, not that I wasn't doing anyone any good, but I think there wasn't the demand on me being, this sounds so awkward. It doesn't the demand on me being the tool when I was working with the kids in the group home, because it was more psychoeducational. It was more crisis management. I think the work I'm doing now demands that I be more of a fine-tuned tool. And I think from working very deeply with a lot of this work and kind of shedding these layers that I put on, these guards, these things, gives me a better place to be more ethically engaged with my clients, to be more ethically connected, to be more ethically in tuned. And when I say ethically, I mean being the best version of me and giving them the best care that they're looking for. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. I know it's kind of an amorphous term, but it's been coming up multiple times,
Yeah.
both in written and spoken, and that's why I was intrigued by what it actually meant to you in this
Yeah.
process. The other curiosity I have, and this is just really being aware of the growth that you've done during this process. If you could travel back in time and talk to this person who was drinking to a point that was almost close to alcohol poisoning. In fact, I think on your blood test, you were actually in an alcohol poisoning number.
Mhm.
What would you tell that person?
Great question. And to be honest, I want to say I wouldn't tell her anything, because I want to tell her that she had to live this. There was nothing that person, other that she wouldn't have heard, but she had to live it. She had to live it to figure it out. She had to go through it. And this is why I joked in the beginning that I'm so honestly grateful for this process. And I wouldn't have said that the first day. I wouldn't have said it the second day. I wouldn't have said the first 6 months. But to be honest, I had to go through all of this to be where I am today. There was no other path. Before December happened, I thought I was great. I was doing great, going to AA, I had sobriety, had all the things. And then that happened and I was shocked. How did one dinner with a colleague, with an old friend, how did that turn into that? And I think only with that again happening was I able to get to where I am today. And I think none of those things would have unfolded had she had that information back then.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ms. Uribe, any questions?
If you were to summarize quickly, like something that you learned, what have you learned? Like takeaway from this, what would you say?
What have I learned? Oh, I honestly have learned that feelings are one of the best pieces of information that one can have and explore. I suppressed them and I compartmentalized them and I didn't even know what they were. And I think it is like literally such amazing information. Every moment of every single experience we have in this world, we are feeling something. And that feeling is trying to tell us something. And this brain has a tendency to tell us things that aren't true. This is a tendency to, feelings aren't always facts, but feelings are a fantastic guide to be able to understand the way we experience the world. And I think through CBT and getting really like in depth with CBT and all the other layers, you know, as we walk through this world, I said everything is internal instead before it becomes external. I check in before I check out. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? Where did that thought come from? Did that thought come from? Is that a bias involved in there? Like what thinking error, what core belief did that stem from? And I investigate all of these things. What am I feeling? What is that? There is no good or bad to it. It just is. And I want to know what it is. I want to sit with it and explore this thing that is guiding all of my behaviors over here, because it will. This feeling will bring me to this behavioral over here. And I want to understand what's happening internally before these choices are made. So I think that is the key to what I've really understood and explore, and I sit with, and every moment I try to stay in that place of awareness. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you doing? What are you doing that's leading to what you're feeling, to what are you thinking? And my wife will kill me because I do it all day long. And I ask her, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And I'm feeling so happy. I'm feeling so excited. I'm feeling so, and I think that is what I've learned most out of this process.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, Dr. Walker?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Mitchell, I have one question for you, but I would be remiss if I didn't first say that I appreciate your testimony, okay, and your supplemental exhibits, especially as they relate to your rehabilitation, your recovery, and your quote-unquote personal transformation. In particular, the section on moving forward. I think that really helped me to pull everything together, given what you shared about your background and where you hope to go and continue to move in this new awareness, self-awareness in this space that you're in. So my question is this: we're in this together. About 3.5 years of probation remaining. Is that correct? Okay. At this time, why do you feel that you are not a threat to both the public or your clients and consumers?
Yeah, great question. And I think, this isn't to qualify or this isn't to make excuses, but, sure, this isn't to make excuses or to qualify anything, but, as far as being a threat or to my clients, I feel like when we talked about ethical, I stepped away from my managerial job because I didn't even want, as a manager, I wasn't even direct contact with clients. I knew that it could trickle down if I started to not be good at what I was doing. So I stepped out before anyone knew what was going on. Ethically, when I got the DUI, I wasn't working. I wasn't using my license. So I wasn't working with clients. As far as a danger to, again, reiterating kind of this paradigm shift that I have about life and about myself, like I not that I wouldn't change anything. Like I said, I feel like I'm at the apex. Like I would do another 3 years doing exactly what I'm doing. And I think I would come back probably having another wonderful story. But, I think I'm solid in the things that I'm doing to move forward in my future, to continue to do them. I feel like I said, honestly, the best version of myself that I have in my entire life, and that's freeing. And whether or not the probation stays or goes, that will stay with me. So again, I don't think I will not be a threat to my clients. I will not be a threat to the community. I've had at least 3 years under my belt to kind of show that. But even when all of this was happening, it was never, my clients would ever be in harm's way or put in any position that would jeopardize that.
All right, just checking to see if any of the board members have additional questions, or those who didn't ask questions in the first place have any now. Not seeing any. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for your testimony. You're excused as a witness. And if you'd like to have your wife come up and testify now, she can do so. Asking for a brief.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll have you come up and testify. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and go off the record.